Linda, let's call the meeting to order.
Would you like me to call the roll?
Please.
Okay. Newton? Swift?
Here.
Green? Ackerman?
Here.
Caroline?
Here.
Gonzalez-Parber? Chair Fragoso?
Here. Do we have a quorum with just one more arriving? Okay, good. Why don't we start then with approval of the agenda? Are there any changes or?
I'd like to add, after the director's report, commissioners' comments and requests. I don't think that was on the agenda.
Okay, that's right. We usually do have that. Can we have a motion for that?
Could we do the commissioner's comments earlier after the public comment? Or just so more people could hear them? I don't know. Just a thought. I actually also have a comment, so up to you. But other than that, yes, I approve.
I would say that we normally always do them after, and because people are here waiting for their items, that we should keep it where we normally keep it as far as commissioner comments. But I would second. If we,
Okay, that makes a second.
Okay.
All in favor say aye.
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 So is that in favor of putting them after the director's report?
Yes.
Okay. Aye.
Yes, that's right. After director's report, and then maybe we could pop that on the agenda on a regular basis for us. We
normally do.
We usually do, I
That
know.
was an oversight.
Okay. Okay, there's no consent calendar, but we do have a public comment item. This is for anyone who would like to address the commission about anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Anything other than tonight's agenda, please step forward. Perhaps we'll wait just one more minute. What do you guys think? Let's give it a... Have we heard from Amy?
I
She's
believe
on her
you
way?
have enough to act with 4.
Okay, then let's move forward, because it's
Yeah,
10
I
after.
would suggest we move forward
Okay.
with item 1.
And this is not one of the most complicated projects we have this evening. 760 Center Boulevard. Rich, are you here to speak on behalf of the project? Please, it's good to see you. Please come forward. Give us your name.
Do we want a staff report first?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. I'm out of it tonight.
Thank you. The project site is the location of the Java Hut, a drive-through coffee kiosk located at 760 Center Boulevard. The applicant proposes to install 2 permanent identification signs along the north and south sides of the new building that the Planning Commission issued approval for on March 20th, 2014. The proposed signs would each be 12.32 square feet in size. They would be made of a powder-coated steel mounted in a steel box frame with steel letters mounted in space off black. The text would read Java Hut, and the font color would be a sunrise red. The signs would be illuminated by 2 rows of LED lights located on the top and bottom of the sign box, just within the lip of that front edge surround. The light source would be in front of the individual sign letters and project light onto the front of the letters, which staff believes is, it's considered not internally illuminated. So because the applicant proposes to put 2 signs on each side of the building, that requires an exception to the sign permit requirements. And the staff report goes into detail about the analysis. And The staff believes that while the background of the sign and the materials of the sign are consistent with the sign regulations, in that they would be compatible with the town's unique character, they would protect and enhance the town's natural setting and the high quality of the architectural design of that new building. It's staff's opinion that the color of the font does not comply with the sign regulations. So with that, the staff recommends that you open the public hearing and take testimony, close the public hearing, and then approve sign application number 1730, subject to the following two conditions. One, that the sign copy color shall be revised to a color that complements the natural materials and hues of the new building and shall be subject to approval by the Director of Planning and Building Services. And two, after the director approves the revised sign font color, the applicant shall obtain a building permit for installation of the sign. That concludes my report.
May I ask, we've got an echo tonight, just to clarify, the reason that staff believes that color is not, I read that this might not be the same as the color of the previous Java Hut sign, which was more of a green, although I haven't seen a photo of it and I frankly don't remember. But is your concern primarily it's harmonizing with the rest of the colors of the Java Hut?
Correct. So the staff report goes into some detail back in, I believe, 1996. Staff was able to find approvals, design review approvals for a sign for the Java Hut, and it did contain this dark green font. We don't have record of a sign with this red font, but apparently such a sign was up at the business. Staff's position tonight is that the proposed sign doesn't complement the new building that you approved back in March of 2014, the font color.
Any other questions of staff?
I had a couple questions. So looking at the sign ordinance, there's some definitions in there. One of them, because I think this building is a little bit unique in that it's got 4 sides. The sign ordinance talks about building frontage, and it talks about the portion of a building parallel and adjacent to a public street and serving as the main access to the building. So I guess that's primarily what we've looked at in the past for consideration of signage. And again, this building is unique with the 4 sides that.
Yeah, but I would say that the frontage is on Center Boulevard because
Right.
that's where you access it
Correct.
from pedestrians and from cars. So that's the street frontage, is the side that faces the street.
Okay. And then the second question is the issue of lighting. So in the sign ordinance, it talks about neon and internally illuminated signs. So do you recall or have any kind of sense of the intent of that restriction?
I wasn't here when they adopted it, but what I heard from design review board members that were around when the ordinance was created, they did not want to encourage a lot of the plastic internally illuminated signs that you see on like strip malls, you know, down on Miracle Mile. You know, there used to be a lot of these types of signs. They wanted to restrict it to neon and other unique types of internally illuminated signs, and they still made any of those signs subject to the approval of the design review board. So they always talked about how much they loved their Fairfax Theater sign, right? I thought there was language in there somewhere that bars could have. Oh, no, that was product signs. But never mind, I'm thinking about something else. So anyway, this proliferation you see of all these neon open signs that people buy at Costco, those are all illegal. So,
You mean the
but this
product
isn't a neon,
signs?
this is, yeah, this isn't a neon sign.
Right,
This
right.
is not an internally illuminated sign.
Right.
If they had light bulbs in the red lettering that lit up, that would be internal illumination. This is illuminated from the outside. But it was a distinct decision. They did not want to look like Miracle Mile and other areas like that.
I have a comment and a question. Were you through with your comments for now? My comment is that, yes, I agree with staff. Typically, an internally illuminated sign or the plastic box signs or the open pan neon signs. So I don't believe this would qualify as internally illuminated. The street frontage, I guess, is Center Boulevard. Wasn't the old sign, the former sign, on the center side rather than on, do you remember?
I thought that the mobile coffee cart, as it was supposed to be, they did get approval to have signs on both sides. We don't have a problem with the signage on both sides because I think because people enter town on Center, you know, you do need a sign on that side. And the unique circumstances that the building does have two frontages, even though one isn't the frontage that you gain access from. If you didn't have a sign on the other side of a building, how would anyone know it was there when they were driving down Sir Francis Drake?
I seem to recall the old sign was red letters with a black outline or something like that.
It had red letters, but what we're telling you is they never went through the proper process to get a permit for the red letters. They only had a permit for the natural green sign, which we attached to your ordinance.
But is green required in the ordinance?
No,
Okay.
but the ordinance says the sign is supposed to, you know, you could look through your findings. It's supposed to complement the building.
Okay.
So we did not feel that this was, the red is Fairfax, you know, bronze
Okay.
maybe, you know, that's just our opinion because the natural wood and the natural gray of the stone and the red, in
Okay.
our opinion, but you guys,
Could we get a closer look at that? And then also, I think Rich has some sign. Oh, I didn't see one. Okay, thank you. I must have missed it. Okay. And then are there any other questions of staff?
Just as far as the frontage, the automobiles will go through on both directions, right? So there'll be a line going one way on one side, the other way on the other side. So it's kind of a symmetrical building. It makes sense to have the two signs. But I understand that brings it up for our consideration.
Okay, let's hear the applicant's report, and perhaps you can clarify something with the photos that you brought.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Commissioners. I think you guys hit really all the questions I was expecting to be asked already get answered, so thank you very much. Yeah, we do have kind of a unique situation where we are on two frontage roads. Center Boulevard definitely is a primary, Sir Francis Drake being the secondary, no doubt. And we look at it being a fairly straightforward sign being placed on both sides. It's well below the allowable square footage. The sign is made of steel. The steel does tie into all the steel canopies and trellises that we have incorporated in the building. I don't know the history of the approval. It happened way back before my time in '98 with the green color. But as far as I've known the Java Hut, it's had this red sign. And what we really were looking to do is the only part of the old building is this sign. The font is pretty unique, and we thought it would be interesting to incorporate this old sign from the past building into the new building. And it was the same color we're proposing for the new sign. Lighting has been clearly described in terms of being right on the edge, LEDs on the top and bottom, so it'll project the light onto the letters that are cut out of steel, and they're held off the back surface of the box we've created to capture the sign. You know, the color, I think one thing about the color of the building that's not being, I think, recalled is the siding is actually going to be a gray color. it's not going to remain the natural cedar. So the palette for the building is gray, you've got the dark black, dark gray of all the trim color, and I think the sign with red works quite well with the overall palette that we're proposing for the building. There are also, I went around town and just took a look at red signs. Fairfax Market has a pretty bright, distinct red sign, both for the building as well as for the entry along Sir Francis Drake. You also have this bright red sign at B of A, a little bit back illuminated, I think. And then we also have a sign at the Marin Museum of Bicycle. It's a red sign on a gray background. So there is precedent within town of red signs having been approved. And the one thing we like about the red sign is not only the historical nature of the past building, but it's the only feature on the building that does jump out and say, hey, we're here. And that's what we're looking for. So we think it's a good design. We think it fits with the overall building. And here to answer any further questions.
Could we take a look at those photographs that you brought,
Sure.
please? This is the former sign.
That's the,
So while we're looking at this, I had a question as far as the lighting on the sign. Do you plan to turn that on and off with building hours?
I'm sure it's going to be on a timer. Yeah,
That's the intent?
I believe so. I'll confirm that with Rick, but I can't imagine he would not have that on a timer.
Yeah, that would be, I was going to ask that too. That would be important to me, to not have it just at 2 o'clock in the morning still glowing up there, just because it's visible from a long distance.
Yeah, I don't think
Houses
that
up
would be an
above it.
issue.
And I had a question in terms of the size of that LED strip. Is it 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch in diameter?
It's a strip that's pretty flat, and the LEDs are along the length of it, and it's pretty much adhered on the steel lips. We've got a 3/4 inch steel lip on both the top and bottom. The LED is going to be adhered to the back side.
So it's a tiny little LED light. It's not like the cords, it's not like that 1/2 inch Christmas light cord.
No.
Okay.
So I'm assuming the intent would be that you wouldn't see the lights. They would just
Yeah.
illuminate the letters, but they would be hidden in the frame.
Correct.
Are you sure they wouldn't create a strange shadow either?
I don't think so, because
Okay.
we have the letters set off the back surface of the box we're creating for the sign.
I lost I just wanted to confirm, so the letters are individually cut letters?
Yes.
Correct, I just wanted to
Yep.
confirm that. And I don't have any issues with the red. I did look on Google. Google still had the old Java Hut in there, so I was able to, they had a picture with the old building with the red sign, and I agree with you, when the other colors are up, I think the red will complement. So I think that, I support it and think it will look fine.
For the old building, did you have the sign on both sides?
I'd have to take a look at the photos. I thought there was, but I'm not entirely sure.
Well, commissioners are looking at all the photographs, and we also have a design concept with a green sign to take a look at, and I think I would agree with the architects that given the coloring of this building, that the red letters, is there a limit to the size of those letters in the sign ordinance? No? There's no square footage maximum?
There's a maximum for the square footage of the sign, but not the font.
Okay. And what is the sign maximum square footage?
So,
Is it like 6 feet?
it's based on the frontage of the building.
Yeah, you're allowed to have 1 square foot of sign for each 1 foot of building frontage.
Okay. So this is about. Is it under the size? It is it's a long building.
And then
The
if
building
you're,
itself is about 30 feet long. The sides are approximately 10 and a half, 11 feet. If you include the trellis area, you're adding another 50 feet.
but then if you're also talking about frontage there, then that's the one side facing center, correct? If it's based on the frontage.
So it says, "The aggregate area of all permanent identification signs for any building shall not exceed 1 square foot for each 1 linear foot of frontage of the building."
And the signs are each a little over 12 square feet.
So the two signs combined are under what
Yes.
the requirement would be, even if we only consider the frontage on the Center Boulevard sign, so that passes.
Yeah, the sign is approximately 6 feet in length and 2 feet in height, and the letters are approximately about 15 inches tall.
I was saying that we have approved a building here that has 2 frontage sides. Thank you, Rich. Are there any other questions for the applicant or for staff? Okay, did you have a question, Bruce?
Nope, no.
Okay, then maybe we'll open it up to the public and see if there's any comments from the community on the new Java Hut sign. No comments? Okay. One. Please step forward, give us your name.
Denise Larson, I wanted to know if this, I'm sorry I came in late, I did not hear if the sign was going to be on the roof or the side.
It's on the side of the building, attached to the building. Here's a photograph. Okay, great. So it's on the brick face,
On the brick face,
on the
okay.
brick face of that building. And
Okay, that sounds good. I was just concerned because it certainly went from a little photo thing to a much larger, taller building, and being stuck on traffic on Sir Francis Drake, I've always loved seeing the trees as they bloom and turn colors and everything throughout the season. When it first went up high, I went, oh no, the view's blocked. So I just was concerned if something more was going to be up, but that looks like it's nice.
Right, no, not at all. We
Okay.
can still see those trees.
Good. Well, they're a little shorter. You can see the tops instead of little trees now, but thank you.
Thank you for your comments. If that's the last comment, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
So I'm inclined to agree that the color would be okay, despite the gap in the history. We don't quite understand whether that was permitted in the past, but at this point it will be, and I think it would look good. It seems like a good idea. I like the LED lighting along the edge because it looks like it'll give a good effect and not create any either skylighting or bright lighting on this around the ambient area. So I generally think it's a good sign.
So I've got concerns with the the Sir Francis Drake side, that when you're down in that area, I'm not sure there are any lighted signs in that part of town. So now we potentially would be adding a lighted sign on Sir Francis Drake that people would be seeing going down or sitting up there in traffic. It's not on the frontage side where people would drive in and out to get to the Java Hut. So, and I don't know if that would be viewable by residents in the area that would look down on that sign and they would see a lighted sign where there aren't any other signs in that area.
Yes, I believe there are houses that do look down on that building. It was the same issue we had with the Versateller that wanted to go in.
Well, not exactly the same. That was a 6-foot square, 10 inches deep.
Internally illuminated.
Internally illuminated
Right, but I think
on both
Cindy's
sides.
point is, right now, you look at that area, there are no lit signs. So these will be 2 lit signs in an area where there aren't.
There aren't any lit signs in that area right now, either on Center or Sir Francis Drake. So I really do have concerns with the lighting on the Sir Francis Drake side, both for folks driving down and then any residents in that area that are going to see, when they look out, see that sign.
I should know this, but I'm afraid I'm just not positive. There is no sign on the north side of Good Earth, right? On the Sir Francis Drake side.
In the parking lot, they have a monument sign that faces, but it's not directly
illuminated.
facing Sir Francis.
That's where the redwood trees are, yeah.
There are not signs on the commercial property across the street on Center?
That building has a sign program approved for it, and if there are any signs that are visible from windows and things, they're illegal because they're all supposed to be hanging below the overhang. They have a sign program approved for that building. The owner got a program through a long time ago.
Well, my sense is, I like the script. I think the color's fine. I think the color would look good on the building. I'm not terribly concerned about having it be lit on both sides as long as they are turned off. What time does the Java Hut close down? Do you know, Rich?
I want to say around 8 o'clock. You should repeat that.
The Java Hut closes about 8 o'clock and is open about 6 o'clock in the morning. 5:30, okay. So it would not be on all night as the Wells Fargo sign was proposed to be a beacon through the night for the neighborhood.
But it would be, 8 o'clock at night would be dark
In the winter.
in the winter, so.
We
Well,
could,
at 8 o'clock at night, there's still a lot of traffic going down the streets. So there, if it's dark, there's headlights going down the streets the whole time. I would like to see the sign shut down at 8 o'clock. So as some businesses do, they turn their sign off when they close, even though there might be still people at the Java Hut cleaning up. They might be there for another hour or two, but that's up to them, but they should turn their sign off at 8.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
and I
agree
would
with that.
recommend you make that a condition, include that in your motion if that's the way you head.
And I would be okay with the 2 signs. I mean, the red's kind of, it does stand out for people driving by, which is good for Java Hut, but, you know, it does stand out. And I would be okay with 1 sign lit on the center side facing the frontage and the traffic coming in, and not have 1 lit on the Sir Francis Drake side at all.
Can we just informally poll? I'm looking at my other 2 commissioners here. How you feel about the lighting on both sides versus 1?
I don't have a problem with lighting on both sides.
Well, I don't either. I think this is, I mean, I haven't seen it, although it looks like you've actually pretty much fabricated it there from the photograph, but I'm thinking from the LED lighting and the way you've described it and what I know about that lighting, I think it's going to be pretty mellow. It's not going to be like a neon lit sign, and it's not even going to be like the photograph depicts. The old Java Hut sign, there was what looks to be a floodlight. It might be a halogen floodlight that was above it. This seems better than that.
Would you come to the podium, please?
With respect to the lighting, we have control to what temperature we select. And we're definitely not going to go down the path of having a 5,000 K type of light, which is natural daylight. It's that bright white light you see from various lamps. I'd be advocating more around the 3,000 K, which is not quite as warm as incandescent, but has just a nice, softer glow to it. And we can control that with the LEDs.
That is really helpful information. For example, for the public, these here are somewhere around 4,000 K, and as soon as I have any opportunity to influence this, I would love to get them changed to a 2,700 K. But yeah, that's good. A warm white color. I think we all are aware of the fact that at night, that's much more soothing. Sort of naturally, as the sun goes down, the light gets warmer. That's the way we're used to things being, and this seems kind of harsh and glarish and weird, and there's a reason for that. So good, thanks for that information.
Also, I think we would have an option if we're getting complaints from Sir Francis Drake on the lighting of that side too. We wouldn't have the option to curtail the lighting on that side once we approve it?
No, you'd have to just see if you could get the owner to, once you approve a sign, there's a 10-day appeal period. If nobody appeals it, that sign's approved, the action is final. You could ask the owner, tell them they're getting complaints, ask them to cooperate with the town, but you really wouldn't have any legal basis to force them to.
I'll put you on the spot, Rich. Do you think that's something that the owner would agree to if we're getting complaints from the Sir Francis Drake side? To reduce the intensity or cut that one side if it got to be a problem?
I'd be very surprised if Rick was not amenable to working with the town on something. But I can't answer for him, obviously.
If there's no further questions, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the signage at the 760 Center Boulevard, application 17-30, and I guess with the added condition that the lighting will be turned off at the close of business hours.
Yeah, and I think you should include the 3,000 K.
Oh, and specify the 3,000 K, whatever the temperature for
color
the
temperature.
bulb temperature for the LED lighting.
3,000 K or below. Yeah.
And do we have an option to condition or to request that the owner review it if there's a problem?
I'm not sure what you're saying. You mean, so put in a condition that if we receive a certain number of complaints, he would...
We're doing a special...
It's not like a conditional use permit. It's a sign permit. Once they put the money into it and you approve it, you're supposed to approve what's presented to you.
That's true. I know, it's putting you on the spot.
The way the town could go is, let's say we start getting a lot of complaints. The council has the authority to declare it a nuisance and go after it that way if it seems like it's not working.
So we do have some fallback.
Right.
If that did become a nuisance. Did you want to say something, Rich?
Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the floor with a couple of conditions. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, and just with a suggestion, this isn't a condition, but just a suggestion that if you haven't done the wiring, that you wire it in such a way that if you ever did need to turn the north side sign off earlier, you'd be able to put a timer on that. But yeah, I think it's not likely that that would happen, but I'm just, if I were you, I'd wire it that way.
That could be a good option, though, to just turn off one side a little earlier than the other. Is that something that's easy enough to do, Rich?
It's probably easy enough to do, but you're relying on somebody to actually implement that on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I think the simplest thing to do is to keep them on the same switch. Like, that way you can put it on timer. It'll take care of itself.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, and that was a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No. Opposed.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so the motion carries. There is a 10-day appeal period, and please let the owner know of the conditions. Thank you, Rich. Here's your photographs. Are there any more photos of Rich's? All right, thanks. Commissioner Newton has arrived. Let the minutes reflect that, please.
Yeah, I was outside because I am too close to that property to have participated.
Item number 2 is 19 Acacia Drive, application for a conditional use permit, retaining wall height variance and encroachment permit to replace a Faline retaining wall and renovate the interior of a single-family residence. Could we have the staff report?
The project site is a little over 8,000 square feet in area and is steeply sloped at 52%. It's within the RS6 residential zone and is developed with a 1,296 square foot residence that contains 2 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. The project involves replacing an existing wooden retaining wall that's failing. This retaining wall is located within the road right-of-way. It would be replaced with a 5-foot tall concrete wall, and that wall would be sited 4 to 6 feet to the southwest, moving it further away from that right-of-way. In addition to replacing the wall, the front entry of the residence would be slightly reconfigured and replaced, and the interior would be renovated by replacing and relocating a wall, renovating a bathroom, and a kitchen, and some other interior improvements. The staff report goes into detail about the setbacks, and the site currently doesn't meet the front required setback of 6 feet or the side setback on one side of 5 feet, but complies with the floor area ratio and the lot coverage requirements. The discretionary approvals that are required from the Planning Commission are an encroachment for replacing the retaining wall. Even though it will be moved further away from the right-of-way, it still will be located in the right-of-way. So a retaining wall for the wall is required. Because of the topography and the siting of the residents on the site, it was determined that the wall needs to be 5 feet high. A variance is needed for walls above 4 feet, so a variance is required from the Planning Commission. And then because the site doesn't meet the minimum area and the minimum width requirement, a use permit is also required for the new construction. Staff believes that replacing the wall is obviously an improvement. If you looked at the photos, the existing wall is failing, and the new wall would be placed further out of the right-of-way, and that the height is needed due to the conditions on the site. And
Excuse me, Michelle, can you clarify? Whoa. When you say the new wall would be placed further out, you actually mean set back from the street,
correct.
the edge of the right-of-way. Oh, that's,
That's right. That's right. So the new wall would be pulled in further from the roadway than the existing wall.
but that would not allow for parking along that wall, would it?
There would be a parking space that would be created there. But there's been quite a lot of back and forth with the fire department about that parking. That parking can't be reserved. Initially, the applicant requested a preferential parking permit to have that dedicated space. That can't be allowed here because of the fire department's requirements, but a space would be provided there for a vehicle. It just can't be designated for this property owner.
And what would the size of that space be?
You're so prepared.
While we're looking that up, not to question our fire personnel at all, but I'm trying to understand why that would be a concern for the fire department, that it's okay to have a car there, but it can't be dedicated to this resident's car.
They've done this once before, and I cannot say that I understand their reasoning either. There's another place up on Ridgeway where the owners originally wanted to do a preferential parking. They were putting $10,000 or more into moving a wall, right? So they thought, okay, we're meeting the criteria for a preferential parking space. We're spending $10,000 to replace a wall, move it further away from the road, and there'll be area for someone to park. Preferential parking allows you to post it for the parking of that residence only. Fire department said, we can't allow that. We want it to be available for our parking too. So they allowed the construction of the area, but one of their conditions was it could not be specifically retained for that residence. So all the neighbors could use it.
It also continues to be in the town's right-of-way.
Yeah,
And so
and it created quite an
it gives the
issue.
town purview over that area, and there's a special permit that's being issued, or that would be issued, in order to allow them to build that, to move that wall back and use it as a parking space. Or anyone be able to park there.
I think the fire department is worried that if people are allowed to post it for the parking of that residence only, it's somehow going to restrict their ability to use it in a fire or as a pullout.
No, I understand. So is the fire department saying no parking is allowed
No,
there?
they say anyone can park there, including them.
That was what I meant.
Yeah. I'm getting the feeling that based on the new state fire laws, our preferential parking ordinance is no longer going to be valid, and we should probably revoke it, or eliminate it. The council, it was after the Oakland Hills fires, and the council was trying to give people incentive to build more parking, get more cars off the road. But what's happened now is the fire departments want any kind of road widening to also provide areas for their trucks. So our preferential parking ordinance doesn't really work anymore with the state fire laws.
But having a pullout for a fire truck is different than, a preferential parking space. I mean, it's two separate issues in that sense.
Well, but what I'm saying is the last two preferential parking applications that we have received, the fire department has refused to support them. I guess that's a better way
Were
to say it.
those, two also on the public right-of-way? They
Yes.
couldn't do so if it were private property that they were building a
that's-
parking space on.
Well, actually, they have
They could.
required people
But
to
it's
actually
harder.
build.
There
Yeah.
has to be a fire safety issue
Right.
involved.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely, there are precedents for the fire department requiring fully on private property for there to be a turnaround or whatever. But if we do, this is we're getting off the topic of this particular application, but if we ever do need to look at the preferential parking ordinance, I would request from staff that we get an explanation as to what the fire department's logic is for
We
that.
can have one of them here when that's considered.
Are there any other questions of staff? If not, we'll open the public hearing, hear the applicants. Is the
Oh,
applicant here?
Can I just, I'm sorry. So looking ahead to the resolution on this, we didn't talk about or have included in there a thing with the roadway, like pictures of the before and after, the video of the roadway, so any reason for that?
It's just not the size of, usually those are for like new houses or 50% remodels, but there's no reason why you couldn't include it. It's close to the road. I don't know that they're going to have a lot of large equipment to construct it, but there's no harm in putting it in.
Cindy, doesn't condition number 7 satisfy that? Any damages to Acacia Road or other public roadways used to access the site resulting from construction activities will be responsibility of the property owner?
Right, and I think that's kind of a standard statement in all the resolutions, but the issue becomes, showing what it looked like before versus what it looked like after. So where we have had some projects in the past, we have asked for that video, so we have documentation of what the roadway looked like before.
New homes, 50% remodels, places where they're building new foundations up on the hillside and stuff, and they're going to have a lot of large equipment. We include the condition that they do a video of the road before they start and provide it to the building official so that the building official has some kind of record of what it looked like before they started.
This one actually looks like it's been patched and extended a couple of times. I would be more interested in what happens in that, how far back does it go, 4 feet? What happens within that 4 feet? Would that just be dirt? Would that be
They're hardscaping that area.
hardscaping with asphalt or? Okay, maybe the applicant can give us some more information on that. Okay. Sir, are you the property owner? Would you like to state your name? Hit that button so you get a red light.
You answered the question. They now require a turnaround, the fire department. And as the fire department and I looked at it together, they told me there's no way we will ever be able to provide that. There's no room. So that's that issue. Gosh, I went blank on the next one.
Ask you then the question about when that wall gets set back from the asphalt of the roadway, that will be about 4 feet by, what is that, 30, 40 feet?
Yes.
What will that be, dirt?
It'll be permeable blocks, only permeable, no hardscape. Permeable is what should be required. So that's what it's about.
And is that a driveway at the end of the, at the corner?
You mean my neighbor's driveway?
Well, looking at it this way, is this a driveway? At the end of the wall?
That's our carport right there.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. And is your carport asphalt up to the gate, up to the door of your carport?
Yes.
Other comments that you'd like to make regarding the project?
I wanted to ask Michelle a question before I make any comments.
I'm so sorry, I didn't get to finish my staff report, but But along the fire department's requirements, I was actually contacted by the fire department because in their comment letter, they had stated that sprinklers would be required for this project, and they are not. So the staff report talks about sprinklers. The resolution talks about sprinklers. Those are not required. They are not required.
No, I think it's a tree branch. It's really windy out there. Sure, some.
So then, on, under the Ross Valley Fire Department, item number 2 would be eliminated.
The sprinkler part, yeah.
And I think, Mr. Jerry, you had some comments about the resolution requires the coloring of concrete for the wall.
Yes.
And you wanted to talk a little bit about that and about landscaping choices inside the wall.
Yes. My concern is the staff report states that the concrete has to have an earth tone color, and yet we have a very large carport. It's larger than a single carport that is very tall and very heavy and old concrete built in the 1980s. I don't mind trying to match the concrete to the new concrete to the old concrete. I mind adding colorant and changing the color entirely.
And what color is your existing?
It's standard concrete gray.
Okay.
And I have a process to age concrete, and I'd like to use it.
And did you want to comment on the landscaping that you're proposing?
Would
Would it not be as it is today with grass and a few bushes?
Let me tell you what it is today. Today it is nothing. This is a wooded lot. It has never been landscaped under any conditions. It is a house in the woods. Anyone driving up there would see there is no landscape. There's no such thing. It's a little hard. Landscaping is sometimes not that easy for a lot of people to handle given the nature of redwood trees and the acidic content of what they put on the ground. I have done a landscape plan. However, it also asks for ivy to cover the concrete wall. And I will say that a major problem with ivy is the rats that it brings. And so I don't want to do that since that's already happened. And in the 80s, all the ivy had to be removed in order to cut down the rat population.
Whose requirement is the?
So these were suggestions of our new planning director to require these kind of softening qualities for the project.
Well, yeah,
Because I'm a little concerned because the staff wasn't able to finish their staff report. They didn't even give our recommendation, so I think.
why don't you finish that?
Yeah,
That would be,
okay.
let's do that. We're
I'm gonna be very quick. Okay, so. Okay, so we talked about the 3 different discretionary approvals that are required. And the need first for the encroachment permit for the location of the wall, although this condition is going to improve because the wall will be moved further away from the right-of-way, and then as well as the need for the variance for the wall height because due to the conditions on the site, the wall needs to be 5 feet high to actually hold back the earth area, and as well as the need for the use permit for new construction on the non-conforming site. The improvements that are proposed are really in keeping with the improvements that have been constructed in other neighboring properties. And the staff believes that those improvements are consistent with the findings that are needed to approve a conditional use permit. So the staff recommends that you open the public hearing and take testimony, close the public hearing, and move to approve application 17-26. That's it.
I have another question before we get there. So another requirement is taking the smoke detectors and powering them in here?
Again, that was a requirement of the fire department. And again, there's language in the resolution that talks about the outside agencies can waive the requirements. So those fire alarms and having them interconnected was a requirement of Ross Valley Fire's comments for the project.
So even though this may not, I mean, this isn't considered a major remodel, is it?
That interconnected requirement isn't always just with major remodels. Is this?
It's also a
are both-
wildland,
Yeah, it's in a wildland
It's a-
urban
it's a-
interface zone.
yeah.
Are both floors interconnected with a stairway?
Yes.
Okay. That one seems to be on a lot of applications, whether they're 50% remodels or not. But,
I can clarify.
Oh,
There's a-
maybe-
There's a provision in the in the building code, whenever you have an application that's, I think it's a pretty low amount, like $2,000, you're required to upgrade your smoke alarm system. But sometimes there's some flexibility with the building official as to, if areas aren't accessible, such as like there's no attic space or something, there's some, yeah.
So if doing that would be difficult, like no way to connect them and do the, okay.
also given the location, as the gentleman said, this is a country house, lots of trees, tall grasses. It's a fire safety issue. I have a question, I think for staff. The stairs, I see that the concrete steps to the right of the failing wall, that is the entrance. Those are the entry stairs for this property, not the property next door. Will they be adjusted when the wall moves back, or do the stairs stay there, or are these the stairs that get rebuilt in their entirety from top to bottom?
Yes. So those stairs get removed, and then if you kind of shift to the left as you're looking, you see this other stairway with the words up, and that will be the new way to enter the entry stairs from Acacia.
And those stairs will end, it's hard to tell from a flat. Those stairs end at the wall?
I believe, here we have on this, on the big piece, there are old stairs it indicates, and these are the new stairs. So they're actually, it looks like this
Yeah. If
new
you-
stairs will be farther away from the house, actually,
Yeah.
than the old stairs.
If you
Yeah.
look on the first sheet, S1, the first oversized sheet, the top right-hand corner, there's an elevation. It says elevation Acacia Road, and you'll see the stairs have been shifted.
I guess from here.
Okay, it was hard to tell they were shifted. It does make more sense when you look at the center of the larger drawing on that page, that the old stairs are completely removed and the new ones are moved to the right. And they will extend a little bit beyond the wall. The new stairs come down and turn a bit. There's quite a few stairs, so those would be coming down into the corner and probably match up with, that looks like a curb. I'm looking at this drawing. So those new stairs come into this grassy slope and come down to what appears to be the curb of the street, right? Is that?
Looks like
Is that right
onto,
here?
onto a flat here that would be. Yeah. Yeah. What we're guessing here is from the drawings and from the photos, it looks like the new stairs would be close to the neighbor's driveway then, if I'm reading that right.
Sir, could you answer a question for me? The photo I'm looking at the corner, this photograph here, is this your wall, this bluish wall?
This is my neighbor's wall. The stairs will be in here.
So they'll be right next to them, but they curve
Yeah,
out a
they'll
little
be-
bit and
they
come
will
down.
come out this way, but they'll be on our property, not my neighbor's.
Oh, so this is the property line, that wall is the property line?
Property line shoots like
And
that.
it angles?
Angles.
And then
heavily.
you'll come right down?
And these are illegal stairs, by the way.
Yes, I could tell. And then this is the curb of the street, right? So your stairs come right down to the curb?
Not really, because,
They'll sit
you're
back a
gonna
little?
Yeah, the whole thing is gonna be back.
Okay. Thank you very much. And you're the property owner, sir? The property owner has just clarified in this photo we're looking at, the low blue concrete wall is actually the neighbor's wall. And the stairs come just inside of that. There. Any questions of staff?
I'd like to, regarding the retaining wall color, I mean, is it possible it could just be painted? I mean, does it need to be, color concrete as part of the mix, or can it be something that's simpler to accomplish?
I'll try to answer it. I think the intent of it obviously is to have it not be so visual kind of gray thing from the road. So if that could be accomplished by texturing, by paint, I think that meets the intent of the requirement. So without having been here and getting more of his input for that,
Do you agree, Linda?
We're going through a transition period, and I tend to agree with the owner. The garage structure is this big gray concrete. I think it's going to look odd to have a different colored wall. But if people are concerned about it just being kind of looking industrial, you can require that it be textured. There's all different, relatively inexpensive ways to texture the concrete. I don't think a color or painting it would look right. But
There's concrete stain. There's a variety of concrete
Yeah.
stains. In my experience, if you put on a brownish concrete stain, it always looks brownish, but it tends to get lighter over time, and sometimes people redo the stain every 5 years or something. But it's something, and it's very inexpensive and easy to apply. And then there's also the texturing stuff, which in my experience, I haven't seen it fail, but my experience has not been long
Right.
enough to, in 20 years, I don't know, I've never seen it for 20 years.
So my fear is that when the planning director made those comments, he hadn't been out to the site, and I don't think he really had a picture of what the existing parking structure looked like. So,
But we can
If
address
the-
that as
if
part of
the-
the resolution, right?
yeah.
If the owner wanted to, of course, they could stain the parking structure as well, but I don't think we have any purview whatsoever to require him to do
It
that
was
because
appro- it
we're
was approved
approving a
that way,
retaining wall.
Right.
We're not recommending that, sir. And I do see item number 14 that the planning director suggested was for earth-colored concrete, which I also agree is not a good idea, given the blue wall that's on the right side, the neighbor's blue wall, and then the concrete, and then introducing a whole other color is just too much. I don't have a problem with cascading planting if the owner wanted to plant something, but I would not recommend ivy. Ivy gets really nasty. If there was something other than ivy, there are a number of things that could be done, but I would not require it to be ivy.
I concur with that comment. We've worked very hard at our house over a period of years to eradicate the English ivy, so I wouldn't recommend introducing it.
Do we want to open it up for public comment?
Let's do that. Sir, did you have a comment that you wanted to make? Why don't you step forward and do that, and then we'll ask the public if they have any comments.
I do have a simple solution for aging the concrete, and I'd like to do it. As far as cascading plants, I don't mind an occasional cascading rosemary plant. I worry about what the deer will eat. We have a lot of deer on our property, enough that I've had to bury one in the last few years. So it's a breeding ground above our house. So cascading plants, perhaps a little bit, but not enough to hide or harm any other plantings. And aging the concrete, I have no problem doing that. That's it.
So, let's open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on this project? One of the neighbors or? Sir, please step forward, give us your name, your address if you like, hit that.
Oh, hi, Steve Scales. Just a quick comment. You know, there's a lot of precedent for natural concrete on the mountainside, from various years and past and things like that. And it seems to me like whenever, and I've done a lot of work in my house, whenever we try to color the concrete or put something artificial into what's fairly natural color, it never comes off right. You get some stain and it's not what you think it's going to look like, and then you try to put some artificial non-native plants on top of it, and all of a sudden you've got something that doesn't look like it should be there. So, I'm all for the aged concrete and letting it get overgrown with all the redwood debris, and then pretty soon we don't even know it's there. Thanks.
Any other comments? If not, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back for the commission to discuss.
If I might, just one minor point on the staff report is you've got a recommendation to approve application 1726 instead of 1733. This is on page 5. On the question of the coloring, I think I agree. I'm not inclined to require a particular color so that the owner can match it to the existing structure. I think that makes sense. Given the redwood forest nature of the area, I also think that a couple of cascading plants would be nice, but agree again that it's I'm not inclined to require much more than that. And I think that's my thoughts.
Are we ready for a motion?
Well, all right, if we're ready, we're not going to have more discussion. On the resolution in the second whereas clause, I think there's a typo. The Planning Commission held a duly noticed meeting on September 21st, at which time the Planning Commission determined that the proposed project as conditioned below. And I think if we do something, we're talking about taking out paragraph 2 under the Ross Valley Fire Department and modifying paragraph 14 above that under a major conditional section, paragraph 14. I don't know, does somebody have some recommendation?
I have an
I
item.
would just delete 14 and leave it up to the applicant to address it.
Actually, we could leave 14 and remove "and earth-colored concrete shall be used." So we still want to ensure that the appearance of the concrete harmonizes with its surroundings. That gives you the option to harmonize with your home. We like your aging concrete idea. And the cascading planting does not say it has to be ivy. You could, as you suggest, pop in 1 or 2 little plants and let it go at that on the interior of the wall to soften the appearance. And I think that would be okay if the owner is amenable to that.
I would agree with your change, Norma. I was thinking the same thing.
So just to clarify, there's actually nothing in writing in here about English ivy. That was just a comment that in the staff report, but not in the resolution. Yeah, okay.
And I see you are installing a Graywater recycling system. That's great. It's Marin Municipal's requirement for extensive remodels.
Just a comment, I'm happy to see this be done, in part because we're getting the benefit of the Graywater system and some of the safety improvements, so I'm happy with the project.
Also, I agree with the height of your wall because, in fact, the hillside you're holding back is quite a bit taller than the wall, and so I can certainly understand how you would need another foot in height to really hold that back. That's a lot of dirt there that you're holding back.
And on paragraph 1 under Ross Valley Fire Department, a designated wildland urban interface zone. And with that, I will move to adopt Resolution 1731 of the Fairfax Planning Commission approving an encroachment permit and height variance for a retaining wall and conditional use permit to renovate a residence at 19 Acacia Road with the corrections noted, the modification to paragraph 14 on page 4 of the resolution to delete the phrase "an earth-colored concrete shall be used" and to delete paragraph 2 under the Ross Valley Fire Department.
Should we add to the motion approving the license agreement, or is that automatic?
No, they need to file the license agreement. That's just a sample.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries, sir. There is a 10-day appeal period, as you know, with a $400 fee to the town clerk. Good luck with your project. It sounds like a good improvement. Thank you. Okay, the next item is 1573 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, design review and sign permit to renovate and slightly expand the former lodge. Interest.
Beauty bar, into the new lodge.
The lodge, into the lodge. And what was that called before? Well, we'll get to that. No, originally.
The old timers.
The Old Timers Bar, apparently. That must have been a fun place. Okay, could we have that staff report?
The project site is 8,620 square feet in area, and it's pretty flat. It's located in the highway commercial zone and is developed with an 894 square foot, 19-foot tall single-story building that was constructed in 1908. The building is considered historically significant. We had the applicants do a historical resource evaluation for the property, and it was pretty, I thought, cool. The findings that were in that evaluation, interesting. It's an attachment to the staff report. There are about 5 redwood trees on the site that are considered heritage, and also a coast live oak that's considered heritage that are located on the property. And the project involves renovation of the building to provide a restaurant. The restaurant would be open Monday through Sunday. The hours of operation are included in the staff report. It would have seating for 35 people. 2 to 5 employees are expected to work during business hours. Improvements to the building would include moving a wall to expand a dining room area. A kitchen would be installed, and an ADA accessible restroom is required and would be installed, and that is the location of the expansion of the building. That expansion would occur in an area where there already was a building expansion. That expansion is 91 square feet. Parking is proposed in the existing gravel parking area at the rear of the site. They would provide a total of 5 spaces, 1 which would be ADA accessible, and the existing sign, which is a historical sign, they would use that beauty bar sign. It would be restained and resurfaced with the lodged text. The discretionary approvals are listed in the staff report, and wanted to go into a little bit the conditional use permit requirements. Because this project would be providing a restaurant that does not provide live entertainment or outdoor or fast service, a conditional use permit is not required for the restaurant in this particular zone. In addition, the staff report goes into an analysis about the traffic generated for the proposed project, and based on the previous use and the anticipated use of the site, staff concluded that a traffic study was not required at this point in time. It was underneath that level that tipped it into that traffic impact report realm. The project provides the required spaces. Town Code Section 17052-030H requires one space per each 200 square feet of gross floor space. The proposed restaurant would be 985 square feet, and the 5 spaces would be provided. So as far as the discretionary approvals required from the Planning Commission, design review is required because this involves new construction in the CH zone, and a sign exemption is required because the sign would continue to be mounted to the roof. And that is something that requires an exception to the sign permit requirements. Let's see. The staff provided quite an in-depth analysis of why this project is consistent with the general plan as far as it being a historical resource. That we go into quite a bit of detail in that in the staff report. As far as the design review goes, because the addition would be placed at the rear of the building, and it would expand a previously constructed addition, as well as the siding and paint colors would match the existing building. It would be not as tall as the main building, and it's modest in size. Staff believes that it complies with the design review criteria listed in Town Code Section 1702040. And as far as the sign exception, the Town Code section regarding signs and granting an exception talks about an exception can be granted if the sign basically meets the purpose and intent of the sign regulations, and if the sign is considered historically significant, which the historian concluded it in fact is. So staff believes that that sign complies with those requirements for an exception. With that, excuse me, staff recommends that you open the public hearing and take testimony, close the public hearing, and move to approve application 17-34 by adopting resolution 1734, setting forth the findings and conditions for project approval. And I wanted to note one thing in the resolution where I caught an error. Excuse me. And in that very last page where it talks about the foregoing resolution, I incorrectly referred to this as the August meeting, and it's September. So that should be September. So thank you.
That was an excellent staff report. Thank you. The historical assessment was very well done.
Yeah, I'd say this was might be the all-time most fun staff report that we've read. So I'll just clarify from my own clarification, the sign, this cruciform shaped sign that is currently on the beauty bar and is proposed to be reused for the lodge, that predates the beauty bar. That sign, that exact shape, and that, in fact, physically, that sign is considered to be, as far as we know, the one that goes all the way back to the historical building. Yeah, and that building, if I read that right, was the first bar in Fairfax. Yeah, that surprised me. Just somehow I just intuitively assumed that bars in Fairfax began where bars are now in Fairfax, but no, over there.
It was really interesting history, wasn't it? I enjoyed that.
So I had some questions. The transportation engineer's trip report. When those are done, do those take into consideration that the prior use there may have been vacant for a period of time? So I mean, the beauty bar was closed.
But not very long.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
You know, we've had that come up before, and usually it's like if it's been closed for more than a year, they will sometimes discuss it, but the way the code reads, you're supposed to compare the new use to the previous use.
Okay. And it probably doesn't take into consideration the size of the roadway, so the traffic there.
No, you know, they have a document called the Transportation Manual. That's what they use. Yeah, they don't come out and take traffic counts for things like this. Yeah. They don't actually study the specific site. They take the square footage of the use and they have average standards, traffic generated by a certain square footage of a type of use. Yeah.
And I guess my question at a different point in time is, you know, the number that we identify for having to do a study, is that just locally determined? Like the trip number that?
The-
You mean
That-
that 100 average daily trips, that was put in the code by the town. Right.
Okay.
And
it's,
determined by the type of business.
I guess I'm not understanding. So a business has to do a traffic impact permit study if it can be shown that they're going to generate 100 average daily trips beyond the use that was previously in the location.
But the 100 trips doesn't come from the manual, it's locally determined. We don't know. Okay, I'll save
Well, I'm
that
not
for
sure I'm
later.
understanding.
I
So
think what I'm hearing is there's two
the 100
two
number-
things. There's the methodology that's used, which is the traffic manual, that's not locally determined. And then there's this determination that if, after that methodology is applied, if it results in a number that's more than 100 beyond what the current one does, then that triggers a traffic study. That is locally determined. I believe that if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, that's what we're
yeah,
asking.
then they go through the whole process of having a methodology for the study approved by the council, and then they do the study, and then it's determined if there's any mitigation measures that can be placed on the project to minimize the impacts they're going to create.
And when we look at that, because looking at the plans, the parking in the back's going to be, there's 2 driveways there, so it's going to be, use one driveway to go in and the other driveway to come out. So have we looked at all at the potential of the left-hand turns or anything into that parking lot? Just curious.
There has not been a traffic, an analysis of the potential impacts of the continued use of this driveway on Sir Francis Drake, if that's what you're asking. No, they have not done a study.
Also, it's not required that it be one in and one out, is there? I didn't see that.
That's on the plans, though. The plans have identified going in on the east driveway and coming out on the west driveway. So one way in and, just doing a circle. So
And
I
just to clarify,
wondered-
is that what the current beauty bar does? It comes in on the east and goes
Right.
out onto Sir Francis Drake?
Yeah.
And everybody comes,
That's the way it's
Out.
historically been used.
everyone comes out onto Drake going in either direction from any of those properties.
That's right. There's no left turn, no right turn. They just have to wait till it's clear to get out, right?
Then there's, on that west exit, there's, I guess my question is there enough, because there's a tree there that seems kind of close to the driveway. And I know on that side, that's also the ADA parking, and we have to provide a pathway from the parking space to the building. I was just wondering if there was enough width there with that one tree, and if the town had looked at that at all.
So the building official went out to the site and said that it was okay.
Then as far as the Childcare Center, we've got, in the back, we had talked about with the Childcare Center that there isn't currently the fence for the childcare center is on the left of the buildings and not on the right of the buildings alongside their buildings. So I guess my question is, now that we have this application, how do we approach or coordinate having that fence put in with the two?
I remember when the childcare facility came through, he had talked about wanting to wait until this project came through here to kind of finalize the design and the exact placement of that fence.
My recollection is that he actually said that he was going to follow up with the neighbors.
And then in the resolution, there's an item about equipment on the roof needing to be screened. So looking at the plans, there's an exhaust fan there. So I didn't know, A, if that was needing to be screened, and then B, how that was impacted by the historical review of the property. And just if that was an issue.
So she received these plans and reviewed these plans when she prepared her evaluation. And in it, she kind of lays out her criteria.
Is the vent at the back of the building?
Let me see.
All of that is at the rear of the building in the newer addition, and not in the historic part of the structure.
She had the plans, and I just think, that screening structure, it's not really a permanent kind of thing. It doesn't alter the architecture of the building. If that vent goes away, the screening can be removed.
So then are we requiring that that vent be screened?
If you can't see, we typically require that roofing improvements be screened, yes, yeah. And that's in your resolution, right?
Yes.
Yes. Well, but coming down the street, I don't know that you can't see that. You know what I mean?
I have a couple.
They're just usually shiny and kind of. Yeah, right.
Okay, Michelle, Linda, here we go. On the page 2 of the staff report, there's an indication that one of the redwood trees is located within the area of the proposed addition. I think we mean that the drip line of the redwood tree. So I just want to clarify that. I had similar questions about the the traffic impacts, just because I would imagine that a beauty bar might have appointments consistently during the day at, staggered throughout the day, whereas a deli might be popular for customers to come at specific times of the day. Is that something that is taken into account when it's just flat out how many trips? It doesn't really have anything to do with the time, is that right?
Ordinance doesn't require that, so.
But if there is an issue, once we find, potentially if, there's a lot of turning at dinner time or lunchtime into there, as opposed to like when the beauty bar and the traffic report talks, estimates how many appointments two chairs had, 2 an hour, that kind of thing. But if we see that there is a traffic issue with turning in, how do we address that? Or can we look back at that point in time if that creates a traffic issue?
If,
Like if there's a lot of
yeah.
people going in there at dinner time or lunchtime, so there's a potential that there's a lot of left turning going in there.
Yeah,
and then that,
this isn't really a use permit, so I think if a business starts creating a traffic problem, you can ask the council to have the police department look at it. I don't, this is an existing building, and you never know how popular these things are going to get, but so you can't really predetermine if there's going to be an issue. There's always ways to put up signs and say no left turn between such and such an hour and such an hour. I mean, sometimes that's effective, sometimes it's not. But, if it creates a traffic hazard, you get the traffic engineer out there to make suggestions for how to eliminate the hazard.
And they have tripled the expected trips from the old beauty bar that had 36, and they're calculating 107, so they've significantly increased the expected traffic, and still it does not meet the requirements for a traffic.
Yeah, they're two separate issues, but for those of us that try to
Right.
navigate in rush hour coming from San Anselmo, that's right where the road goes from 2 lanes to 1, and you've got a bunch
I'm
of
one of
different
those
roads,
people, too.
Sleepy Hollow comes in there. So anyway, it's just something for us to think about.
It
I have
isn't, it is, and it's a problem because you have an existing building that someone has a right to do something with, and it's not really this one business's fault that Marin has become so popular and so many people have so many cars.
If it were new construction, a new building, then we would have a very different purview and traffic analysis.
Yes.
But I think it's helpful to hear, to talk these things out and
Yeah.
think about them out loud, because as you say, if the town, decides that there is an issue, we do still have the authority to put
Yeah.
signs up with no left turn
I think
signs
if
and
the
things like
police
that.
suddenly had a bunch of accidents occurring there, they're going to start looking at that situation and trying to determine how they can stop the accidents from happening or the bad interactions from happening, right? Yeah.
And if we look at the resolution on item number 7, there is something about ensuring that the traffic is consistent with the requirements and a process whereby a new analysis would be conducted if it gets to be a problem. So it is spelled out in the reso.
Okay, so on the bottom of page 5 in your staff report, there's a reference to the unique shape and historic significance of the site, and I think it's the unique shape of the sign. All our sites are kind of unique shape though, too. Okay, in the resolution on item 7, the citation should be to Town Code 17.056.070 in 3 different places.
Instead of 30,
Yes.
it's 17.056?
Correct.
Or just 56?
17.056.070. And then in the paragraph A as well, but in paragraph B, it's 17.056.050. There's a typo in paragraph 9 with too many thes. Okay, that's it.
I'm ready to hear from the applicant. Does anyone else have any questions?
Is the applicant here? Would you like to make some comments? Okay, we're ready for you now. Thank you for waiting. No, it's okay. You wanted to make that comment? You can do so now.
Yeah, turn that on. Wanted to thank the commission and town staff for their time tonight and for all the work on our project. My name's Brian Bruckner. I'm here with my wife, Lori. We're the property owners, new property owners, and soon-to-be business owners, hopefully. I'll also have my architect, David Gill, here with us as well to answer questions. On the fence, you were talking about the fence earlier. I've been talking regularly with the owner of the property next door, and so we're coordinating on that to get something that looks good and make sure that, you know, it's placed properly. So we've definitely been working on that. On the traffic concerns, it's our hope that, you know, there's a potential that maybe it mitigates, you know, trips going eastbound on Drake to Red Hill and downtown San Anselmo. There's not a lot of, there's really nowhere to get anything to eat kind of at the end of Sleepy Hollow there on Butterfield or in the eastern section of Fairfax and the western side of San Anselmo. So we're hoping to get a lot of just walk-in business, and so we don't anticipate a big increase in traffic. So that would be my comments on that front.
Do you plan to have any bike parking?
Absolutely. I'm a huge cyclist, and I actually have another business in San Francisco. I actually have a bicycle shop. And you know, yeah, absolutely.
Where are you proposing to locate that, and how many bikes would you accommodate?
Be in the back part of the building, very close to the building. So, you know, I would anticipate trying to accommodate somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 bikes. Yeah.
I had a question. I couldn't look. I know you're removing the bar area and the back bar inside.
Yes and no. We're gonna obviously this building is a huge attraction for us. It's you know, every time I come to Fairfax, I see that building. It's iconic to me, and I think of Fairfax, and we want to preserve it in perpetuity. And so we're keeping the bar and just moving it back a little bit so that we have a bigger dining room space. And then the back bar we're going to keep that, but probably relocate it inside the building and just use it as a decorative piece.
Okay. I wasn't familiar with how the back bar looks. Some of them are very
It's a very nice,
ornate.
yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely something that you want to keep.
Okay. And then lighting. So the sign, and I know the old sign probably had up lighting as well, and you've got up lighting on that sign.
Yeah.
So a couple questions. It's probably not feasible to have the lighting from the top go down so that the light, you know, doesn't go up. I don't know.
Do you have any comments on that? I know right now there's two, you know, floodlights at the bottom pointing up. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I imagine anything could be done. We could probably.
David Gill. Can you repeat the question or clarify it? This is
So
for
I know
signage.
the existing beauty bar and has the sign, and then the lights illuminate the sign from the bottom
From
up.
below pointing at the sign.
Right. So that's got that light going up versus having lighting on the sign pointing down. I don't know if that's feasible with that.
Well, we're proposing illuminating it from the lower edge, pointing back up towards the sign to illuminate the sign. We think if the source of the light is higher and pointing down, then that's actually a potential glare issue. If you're pointing back down into the sidewalk or the traffic, that it would actually be less desirable in that way. If
Okay.
the source is lower, then it's going to be less
Okay.
hazard, more effective.
And I forgot what my other question
Yeah.
was. Oh, as far as having it, sort of the same question we had with the other applicant, do you see having the light turned off when the business is closed?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the lighting was something that I was noting as well, and it's in some ways kind of a conflict between the historical way that kind of a sign was lit. They always lit them from the bottom. I'm sure that's the original way that it was done. But then the sort of modern idea that we should try to keep dark sky principles as much as possible, just because we've come to discover that there's an awful lot of lights out there. In the old days, there weren't that many lights, and it wasn't such an issue. So, and I think your point is well taken, that even if you figured out how to suspend a light up above and shine it on it, that could create glare in the eyes of the drivers and be a worse situation. And you certainly, with the historic sign, you're not going to go with something like the earlier sign application that we looked at, where it's a completely different design. So the only thing I can think of to possibly consider, and I'll suggest that you consider this, especially with LED lighting, we have really a lot of interesting options that LEDs give us that incandescent and fluorescent lightings never did, because LEDs are inherently directional. And so if the lights could be positioned where you're proposing to position them, but you're very careful to select lights, that maybe even a couple of lights that shine on the top and bottom part of that sign that are very narrow in beam, so that you don't get a lot of spill of the light beyond the signs. So you get a nice even lighting of the sign, but with less of the dark sky, compromising the dark sky. I'd suggest that. I think that would look really nice.
Yeah, you're right. With the LEDs, there's a lot of good options now.
I see two problems with that. One is that you would need to rewire. And two, LED is not a historical light fixture. In fact, the current spotlights, I would just about wager, were not the original lights. Those signs were typically neoned, or with the what do you call them, the Chicago lights? I forget what they call the little lights all the way around, was what you typically found on these kinds of blade signs from the early 1900s. So the spotlights you have now are probably from the 30s, 40s. And I would keep what you have, because that's what was approved by the historical consultants.
But were the lights themselves approved, or just where the lighting is? And probably anything they do, they'd have to rewire at this point anyway. I mean, I'm not sure that the historical analysis discussed the type of light.
I'm sure they didn't recommend LEDs.
Well, I would push back on that a bit. I think, for one thing, the wiring is no different. So if you've got a light at a certain position and you've got 110 volt wiring to that position, then it doesn't matter whether it's LED or whether it's halogen or whether it's standard incandescent, it's the same wiring. But the LEDs, I guess I would add also, whatever you do, if you use, and the reason I mention LEDs, of course, I like them because they're efficient and they're also long lasting. You'll like them because you don't have to go up there and change them. But the reason I mention them in this case is because you can really get a tailored narrow beam. But you would definitely want a low color temperature, just as we talked about with the earlier application. The color temperature, like this kind of glarish, bluish looking light, is a high color temperature. That's ugly. We don't want that. But it's not going to look like it's out of place historically just because we're using an LED light. If it's a 2700 Kelvin light, then it's going to look just fine. So I would push back on that there's any it's compromising the historic look of it.
You're
I'm just-
probably right,
yeah.
but I still think it would require an assessment by a historic preservation specialist on that.
Can you speak to that, Linda?
I think in her report, she identified the things that qualified for her to look at, which is the architecture, she lists them. And how the building is lit wasn't one of the things that qualified for the state historical regulations that she was reviewing it for. So I'm not
In
that
in
worried
1908,
about that.
I would hazard a guess that it wasn't illuminated.
No lights then, probably.
Well, you know, the bulbs they were inventing back then actually still work today. There's some amazing technology, actually.
You know, she identifies the sign, but she doesn't she doesn't make an issue of the fact that it's not the way they were with the little light bulbs, around all the edges. She says it's.
Well,
I
there's.
don't think, well, anyway.
I-
If you want to include a condition that we ask her prior to issuance of the building permit, if a change in the way the sign is lit should have been covered, I guess we could do that, and I don't know what we'd do then. Someone would have to appeal it to the counselor. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that the lighting of the sign, but I could be wrong. She calls out the things that she's required to look at per in her historic resource evaluation.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. So, some of the other things that were not included in her historic evaluation were the inside, and we think those are important. So just because they're not in her historic evaluation, I don't think that should bar us from opining on things we think are important from a Fairfax perspective. And that's why I was really glad when Cindy asked you about the interior and the bar, because it seemed to me that that was a huge issue that had been just completely left off of the historical analysis. And so, and there's a lot of other details that I don't think that historical analysis went into. There was a reference, for example, to deteriorating brick stoop and things like that. And I was curious about what you guys were planning to do on some of the exterior and interior details that may not have been covered in the historical analysis, but which, from the perspective of people that like history, are still important.
I'm a big history buff myself, and so as I mentioned earlier, it's my desire to preserve that building in perpetuity, and only make the changes that are needed to comply with certain codes, things like the ADA bathroom and whatnot, but do it in a manner that keeps it consistent with the original period design. So the bar is staying, the back bar is going to be relocated inside, but it's staying, the floors are staying. So our goal is to preserve it, and exterior as well. There's horse tie-ups out front on the wall. We want to try to clean the wall up a little bit. It's deteriorating a little bit, so do some things to preserve that. But that is our intent, to try to preserve it as best we can.
I mean, my thoughts, when we finish with the public hearing, I guess I'll tell you guys what my thoughts are.
May I ask a question about the sign? So I think right now, it's just kind of been painted and with the letterings, and I don't know if I see on the drawings exactly what it is you're planning. Like, are there going to be raised letters? Are you just planning to paint over what's already there? I'd like to have some more information about that.
Yeah, I think what we're looking at is putting a wood template over it in the same exact shape that's there right now, and then having the lodge spelled out or cut out of that wood, if that makes sense.
But yeah, I would encourage that there be like some kind of relief, either raised letters or whichever, or reverse or whatever. I think would really help. I think the sign is a real asset to the building, and right now it's not.
Yeah.
It's not as good as it could be. So.
Not at all. Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's a great application, and I think you're cleaning up the back. I mean, I think the property's been neglected, and I'm glad that you're going to preserve it and keep it around for a long time, hopefully.
Thank you.
I have one quirky question for you. They have the hitching rings in the concrete, or I don't know if there's more than one, but it would be great to be able to preserve that
Oh, absolutely.
in case
yeah.
I tie up my horse there sometime.
Yeah, there's quite a few rings actually still
Good.
there. Yeah. So.
In Oregon, they do a thing where they buy, little plastic ponies and animals, and will tie them up to the old hitching rings on the street. That's kind of cute. No more questions of the applicant. We still have a public hearing to go to. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Gentlemen. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to address it? Please step forward. Get a red light on that microphone and give us your name and address if you don't mind.
Hi, my name is Jim Donahue, 16 Ramona Way. It's good to see you guys again. I have my question is potentially off topic, so apologize in advance if it is. I'm going to try and ask it anyway. We know that there is no requirement at this moment. There is no application for an outdoor area. I live, my backyard's maybe 50 to 75 yards away from the parking of the lodge. My question is, which is potentially off subject, but I just want to try and get ahead of it, is my concern of the next logical step, which is an outdoor area serving alcohol. And I wanted to know if I could maybe get some advice from the Planning Commission of how easy that is to apply for, or whether it's kind of something like that is a given, and that all I can do is just modify it around the edges. And the reason I asked that question is because of you guys is because I know there's an alcohol license before that, and I'm just trying to get as much information as I can.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. And honestly, when I read the staff report, I looked for that myself and was very glad to see that there was not an outdoor facility proposed. And in fact, staff can help me find that section where we clarify that because there is not an outdoor facility or it's not a takeout food, the review process is less restrictive than if that were the case. I'm trying to find that. Michelle, do you know?
Yeah, it's on page 3, right under required discretionary approvals. That first paragraph discusses that.
Michelle, excuse me, can you just kind of briefly talk about, if an applicant wanted to do something like that, what the process and the requirement would be?
Why don't you just read that paragraph? I think that's fair. Reading the paragraph helps.
So in our central commercial, in our highway commercial zone districts, this is in the highway commercial. What the ordinance says is that businesses are supposed to take place inside buildings. But under conditional uses, it says that businesses can apply for a conditional use permit to do some aspects of their business outside. So if they wanted to have outdoor seating in the future, or they wanted to have events outside in conjunction with the business, they would have to come back before you requesting a use permit. Use permits are just reviewed on their individual merits, and the Planning Commission takes into consideration the surrounding uses and determines whether they think findings can be made to approve a use permit for whatever the applicants are requesting to do outside of the building. So.
Thank you. Does
Yeah.
that help?
I can speak to that. I
Every
think.
application is reviewed on its own merits. There's no way for the planning commission to determine without an application in front of them what the process is going to be like, how easy it's going to be. We have numerous businesses in town that have been granted use permits to have outdoor seating.
We've
So they
also
do get
had
approved.
lengthy discussions and multiple meetings about some of those, so I wouldn't characterize it as being easy. It's not
I mean,
something
you're-
that's
and you're
just
ask-
sort of done like that. There've been considerable pushback both from the planning commission and the community on some of those applications, and they don't just sail through.
They would have to come back, a whole new process requiring or requesting a conditional use permit for that. There would be a public hearing here at the Planning Commission that is required, and that would be an opportunity for you or any other of the neighbors to come in, and that is your time to come and express any concerns that you have. And in fact, if you are not already in communication with these owners, I know they are talking to the childcare program, you might just turn around and introduce yourself and have that discussion with them to let them know what problems you've experienced. The current owners may or may not be aware of this gentleman's situation, but it's been quite a troubling issue for him, and so I can see how he would be a little freaked out about the possibility. As I said, I looked for that immediately myself in this review, and was very relieved that you were not proposing an outdoor lounge or music or anything like that. That at least answer your question on the process? Okay, thank you for coming back. Okay, so that was the public comments. One more.
Denise Larson, Scenic Road. I think what threw me was saying not at this time, and I imagine him seeing that. It's you get in, you get your business, and go, oh, now people want to eat outside. So if it just didn't say not at this time, it sounds like it's coming down the road. It just leaves the door open. I think that if it said that's not being proposed, I'd probably think people would feel more comfortable. As someone who used the beauty bar until it closed, and usually there's only maybe one hairstylist in there at a time, maybe two, and maybe one or two customers at a time, myself included. So it wasn't very busy. It is very difficult to get out of that parking lot and turn left if you're going back into town. So there may be something down the road if people are coming and going. It's not easy. Because you have to, there's so many people coming westbound or eastbound different times of the day that you sit there for a while before you can make a break to go left. I also was, I'm glad to hear, very glad to hear that I loved the wide plank floors and the bars and everything in there. That it wasn't considered a historical building. That concerned me because I don't know what they were going to do on the inside, and whoever did the historical review and didn't have any comments about the inside, I don't know who that person or group was, but they're not very good, let's put it that way, because that should have been taken in consideration when you're looking at something historically. It's not just the outside, but there's a lot of cool things on the inside that made that building really great. So I'm glad to hear that they are happy about that.
Actually, it depends on the type of historic structure, and oftentimes the interiors are exempt from historic review unless it's a really pristine historic heritage site. And so I found no fault with the environmental review, historic review on that.
I just would have been very sad if they had different plans and they said, okay, everyone's worried about the dang sign, and then that whole interior, finding that kind of wood and that type of woodwork, and that people leaned up on that bar when I write my check out and pictured people sitting at that bar, in the early part of the last century. It's a shame to lose those things. So once they're gone, they're gone.
Continue to write your checks right at that bar, I think.
No, now I can still see my person somewhere else. Lastly, I was concerned a little about the parking. 5 spaces if you have 2 to 5 employees, and up to, I think they said 35 seating. 5 spaces seems awfully small, and 30 bikes when most people do come down. Most cyclists aren't riding on Sir Francis Drake, but I know there's not a lot of area back there, but my guess is there will be people just aren't walking necessarily down Sir Francis Drake. They're walking down Center, they're walking down Broadway, Blenus obviously. So I think there will be some more cars, and to be realistic, you maybe can't add more, but my guess is people will be parking more in the neighborhoods. But again, I'm very glad they're keeping the aspects of the interior.
Sure, Steve Scales. The one thing I wanted to get on the public record was that old George Lucas used to get his haircut there. And 20 years ago, when my kids were getting their haircut, it was just really cool to see that, of all the places he could go, he chose to go there. And it did make me really think about it, that really, I love the place, and it's good we're preserving all of the material aspects of it. But really, when I was thinking about Mr. Lucas, right, it's the people that really make these things valuable, right? And I think the location of it, the history of it, the fact that people in the neighborhood that do know that George used to go there, and the tie-in with the kind of guy he was and the kind of building that was back in 1908, it's just, I think the story will continue to evolve, and it's a great use of an iconic building that I think the community will rally around. And I just wanted to get that on the record that, that was pretty cool that old George, Mr. Lucas, I should probably say, frequented it. The other thing I would say is, parking and traffic in Marin is really getting quite horrible. And I think more and more people aren't going to be, putting themselves through the anguish of trying to, get through that intersection and jam their car into five spots. It's easy enough to get around Marin on your bike or walk that most locals, I think, will just visit or frequent, without having to get in their car, which is a good thing. And it is at a location in Fairfax that, in that regard, would cause a lot of people that would otherwise go to Red Hill or go downtown as an intermediate, stopping alternative, right? So more than anything, I just wanted to get the record that the historical humanity issue of it.
We appreciate your comments, and in fact, historic personages is a characteristic of historic reviews of properties. So
awesome.
I'm not sure that George alone gives them a historic plaque on the building with his name, but very excellent point.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, not seeing any more public comments, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
I had a question for staff. We received the email comment today, and it talked about parking and security and the lighting. Can you address for me the lighting for the parking? And is there a potential impact to the neighbors?
So if you could come up and address if there's any overhead parking or lighting for the parking?
There's currently no overhead lighting proposed for the parking.
So is there any lighting in that back parking area at all?
There's, if I'm remembering correctly, there's some wall-mounted fixtures at the doors on the back to serve, path lighting, but there's not lighting in the back portion of the lot.
So you're open till 10? And so if people are parking back there, is there an issue then with no lighting for the parking area getting from the lodge back to their cars when it's dark?
Perhaps. We hadn't discussed lighting requirements for the parking area.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I happened to go over to the lodge the other night in the back, and yeah. Our neighbors at the preschool have actually put a big light on the bar that now illuminates that entire back parking lot, and it goes on, it's a motion light, basically. So I think that was a security thing for them, but that definitely lights up the whole thing as soon as there's movement back there.
They put it on the bar?
The
It's
barn.
No, it's
Oh,
on the
the barn.
barn in the
Okay.
back, facing the parking lot,
Thank you.
yeah.
So I guess the town engineer has looked at that from a safety perspective for the parking, and there's no issue?
The town engineer doesn't review lighting in parking lots, so maybe Laura can speak to that. I don't know if the building code, does the building code have requirements that you have to have certain illumination in a parking area? I don't think so.
I'm not aware of it. I think
Yeah.
it's usually kind of just a town ordinance.
I
kind
think
of
that
thing.
sometimes people's insurance companies will make recommendation for lighting, you know? If they're going to build, if they're gonna put up any kind of structures or posts to light the parking lot, I think it'll have to come back for design review. But it sounds like it's not an issue because anyone that goes back there is gonna get lit from the lighting from the barn.
I'm thinking that the lighting on the building and this adjacent, but I mean, it would maybe be a good idea if they could be like on motion so that they're only on when they need to be on would be.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
and I
about
think
Deer
there's some
Park Villa
is this-
because Deer Park Villa has a similar parking lot and I think they might just have some lights attached to some of the trees or something, right? There's no overhead lighting in their dirt lot. Do you know where the closest street light is?
Well, there's also that car wash.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like there's kind of a lot of light in that area anyway, but
I was also going to say, isn't there's some vegetation along the back also that would block any kind of lights that you may have on the building, I think, from neighboring properties.
No, the email just brought up the whole issue of, and I hadn't seen it on the plans, of, the parking, which is in the back, against all of that vegetation right now, where those parking spaces would be, that there might not be any consideration of lighting for the parking,
I think
but
their insurance company will advise them about that, but it's pretty easy nowadays to put in these low-level lighting that directs light down that doesn't extend above the fence. So was your fear was that maybe they'd put something up that would shine into the neighbors' yards, right?
that's the comment from
Yeah.
the neighbor, but then it raised in my mind, on the plans, what the lighting was going to be for that parking area in general,
kind of
and
up
I
to the-
hadn't looked at it, so.
Yeah, I think it's up to the commission if you want to get involved
Could
in
we-
it.
could
It's
we
not a
add a
building, it's not a building code requirement, and my recollection is it's usually the property owners' insurance companies that are the ones that start getting involved with saying you don't have adequate lighting for safety reasons.
Would the owner be amenable to having the lights at the rear of the building be motion sensing? And then also having them, well, you wouldn't have to turn them off as long as they're motion sensing. And then if you do install any lights, to have them be ground lights, and that would have to come back. Would that not have to come back for approval? Linda, if they do install lighting back there beyond what's on the back of the building?
Only if they're like lighting structures, like if they put up posts. So this person's saying they don't want overhead lighting. I think it's simple enough to just say that if security lighting is installed for the back parking lot, that it shall not be overhead lighting. And then they have to solve it either with these little bollards that, that
I
stick.
think that's
Landscape lighting.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's a
You're welcome.
condition that we would add to this project, and you seem to be nodding in concurrence. And then please do have the building lights at the rear be motion sensing. That's easy enough to do.
if the childcare has a great big light that's not lighting up the whole thing now, when those go off, and you're in your house and you have blackout blinds, it's like, so they may need to, I hope you can talk with them, because you have people going in and out, that's going to go on too, and that will probably bother the neighbors, certainly more than some landscape lighting, to be aware of the one that's already there. There's probably no one walking around there unless a deer goes by at night and sets it off, but it's going off and on a bunch of times from 5 o'clock when it gets dark till 10 at night. That might bother the neighbors, so maybe talk with them about that.
Thank you for that last comment, actually, because in 16 Ramona Way, there's basically a floodlight that actually illuminates probably pretty much the inside of our house all night from the daycare. I've never addressed it with the owner of the daycare because there was so many other things to address with him. I didn't want to overload him, but that floodlight is, it's on all night.
And those can be adjusted so that they're motion sensing.
Yeah.
And you're the one I was thinking of when I mentioned that, because I know your whole house faces that way.
No, I think in the case of the lodge, we're probably far enough away, but if I was to kind of stand up maybe for the person who wrote the email, floodlights, you can see them in your house at night, especially in the winter time.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Commission like to do.
So my thoughts on the LED versus historical nature of the lighting on the sign is that the current spotlight, even if that was historical, is not good. And so historical and good aren't necessarily synonymous. And I think that if the LED, I would basically leave it up to the owner. I trust that they're gonna, take into account the historical nature, and they were the ones that talked about the glare. So I think they'll be sensitive to the appropriate lighting for that sign. And I don't necessarily think we need to control it, sort of micromanage that.
I completely concur. I was offering that as a suggestion, just in terms of being aware of what some of the options are. Well, I think this is a good project, my overall impression on it. There's, because of the way our ordinances are written, and in fairness to this applicant relative to what other applicants have to go through, we can't order a traffic study. I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that as you pull out into Sir Francis Drake, that is one of those places where you're trying to make in many cases, a left turn into traffic when it can be pretty heavy traffic there. It is fortunate that there are stoplights that kind of block the traffic right around that area, but still you're going to be waiting for that light and then trying to dash out there. So that's a concern I don't think we can do anything about except just to monitor it going forward. And I hope everybody's hopes here that somehow we find our way out of all these cars and figure out a better way to get around, because they come up every time we try to do anything. But other than that, I have no concerns about the project, and I think I've learned a lot about the history of that building, which I had not been aware of, and I think it's pretty neat what you're trying to do with it.
When we, on my copy of the arborist report, the item 10 in the tree protection measures is slightly cut off the bottom of the page. I just want to make sure when we finalize this that the attachment is fully there.
Are we moving towards a motion?
I would like to add, I think we have the condition of the security lighting, but I'd also like to add a condition about the sign, to make sure that the lettering that I spoke of is incorporated, because not just for this application, but like moving forward, I think, so that we can control that better. And I also, regarding the arborist report, condition number 10 only speaks of the redwood trees, but Michelle, I believe you also said there's an oak tree on the property as well. So I know maybe we can just say trees or whatever, so that are referenced in the arborist report instead. So make sure that we capture all of the trees in question.
Could you repeat for me what you said about the lettering? I heard you say you wanted them to be there'd be some kind of relief, the letters be raised or cut into the sign?
Yeah. The sign shall have relief with raised or reversed letters. I don't know if anyone has.
And when you say reversed letters, do you mean carved into the sign?
Yes.
Okay.
That's usually the term that's used.
I just want to make sure
Well,
So
we want to leave, the applicant can have their option. I don't think we want to control too much, but.
So that would be a new paragraph B under sign permit. That would be a new paragraph B under the sign permit requirement exception in the resolution.
Well, I'm not sure if it belongs there or if it just belongs at number 12, because I kind of understand
Okay.
sign permit, that's just that it's a special approval that's needed.
Okay, so it's not B, it's a new paragraph 12, Linda. And what are we doing about the,
I wrote down Linda's note about the security lighting. Is that what you're talking about? Number 13, if security lighting is installed, it shall not be overhead.
The lights at the rear of the building, the applicant had agreed to have them be motion sensing, because those could also be left on all night. You forget to do that, and that would drive the neighbors crazy.
Are you,
The ones at the rear,
it'd be part of 13.
it could be part of 13.
but was the applicant planning to leave those on all night?
I don't know.
What was the question? we were writing down the condition that the lights are on
Whether
the rear
the
door
applicant would be leaving the lights on all night, but given the concerns about lighting from one person who came to speak before us and someone else who sent an email, it seems like a really easy thing to do, to put them on motion sensors.
Or can we put just everything on a timer and it just all goes off when we leave? Because if it's on motion sensors, that might be more irritating.
You could do that if you want.
I would concur, maybe say either motion sensors or timers, so that they're not on after hours.
Well, if they're on motion
To give-
timers, I mean, if they're on a motion sensor, then they're going to come on and off through the night. But if the applicant's intent was to just turn those back lights off once they've closed, then that takes care of the problem, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Well, actually, it could say motion sensors and/or timers, because you can also have a timer so that even though there's a motion sensor, it will not.
You know, the only thing I'm getting a little concerned about is that is it's a little bit screened back there. Once the fence goes up next door, it's going to be a great place for someone to go and hang out. So it's like, maybe it's better that the lights be on all night. I'm afraid their insurance company is going to require there to be some kind of lighting back there.
But then, in that case, then they could address it with their insurance company, and as long as it isn't something that...
But you guys were going to add the condition that that the lights by the door had to be motion sensitive. And what if their insurance company says, we recommend that you have them be on at night so people don't go back there?
Well, I concur, Linda, that we sometimes, I feel a little uncomfortable with us trying to stipulate things in great detail for someone who's actually there at the property, and going forward, conditions may change. For example, the people over at the school may decide to turn off their light at night that's on all night now from what we hear, and
then it's
that changes the whole scenario. So I don't know how to word this. I'm open to any suggestions, but I would step back and say what we're trying to achieve here is just to say, please be sensitive to the neighbors who don't want to have a light shining in their window all night long. That's what we're trying to get at.
I think you can require that any exterior lighting be dark sky lighting screened so that it directs the light directly down. But leave whether it's motion or on all the time up to them. That way it's not spreading out to the neighbors. It's being focused down by the door to direct people to the door, right?
Works for me.
Are we ready for a motion? Because, okay, I'd like to make a motion for approval of application 17-34 for the design review and sign permit for 1573 Sir Francis Drake with the amended conditions that were number 12, number 13, and revision to number 10, and any of the other corrections that were noted by the commission.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Your project is approved. There is a 10-day appeal period and a $400 fee for appealing. And we're delighted to have that building come back to life and to have you restore it as you propose. Thank you very much. Exactly what the town needs. Okay, 75 Woodland Road, request for a use permit and combined side yard setback variance for a 24 square foot window and seat addition. Could we have the staff
Yes.
report, please?
Okay, the project encompasses the legalization of an unpermitted 25-square-foot window seat addition to the master bedroom of this existing residence, which is located on the 3rd floor. The addition will increase the living space square footage of the residence from 355 square feet to 380 square feet. As indicated by the chair, it will require the approval of a use permit because our code requires that any improvements on a house that's located on a substandard parcel, substandard in size or width, must get a use permit from you before they can do their addition. It requires a variance of the combined side yard setback because the window seat pops out a little over 3 feet from the wall of the house, and it does provide additional living space, but the house does not maintain the required 20-foot combined side yard setback. It exceeds the minimum required side setbacks. The house is similar in size to other homes in the neighborhood, so this small addition is not going to result in a house that's out of character with the other homes in this subdivision. The unique characteristic of this parcel that makes it impossible for them to comply with the combined side yard setback is that it's a boot-shaped lot. It's much wider at the front. It narrows to 50 feet in the back, and that's where the house was built. And so the only way they would be able to comply with the combined side yard setbacks is if they relocated the residence. The window seat pop-out is located a significant distance from the residence on that side of the house, up at 84, 88, and 90 Toyon. Those houses are also at a much higher elevation than this house. This house is set well below those houses' windows. So, and there's a lot of trees in between. So staff's opinion that this addition really will not have a significant impact on the neighboring properties. We believe the findings can be made by the commission for approval of these 2 discretionary permits, and therefore we're recommending that you adopt the resolution that we've provided, Resolution 1733, approving the application and setting forth findings and conditions for the project approval. And that that concludes our report.
I'm sorry, Linda, is that all we're doing, is basically just approving that prior addition that was not permitted?
A seat addition.
25 feet. Okay.
So again, my question goes to the Ross Valley Fire Department, just clarifying that for the building of a window seat, they're requiring the fire alarms be interconnected and put on AC?
Yep.
So that's according to the, what seems to often happen, that we push improvements, especially safety improvements, when we get the opportunity, even though they're kind of unrelated. My question was also about the fire section there. Because it is in a WUI area, does that mean that tempered glass is required? Especially for that window seat area, which I assume has more glass than a typical room?
We put in all the conditions that the fire department relayed to us. But I will just remind you guys that the fire department reviews all the building permit submittals. If they've missed anything, them not relaying it to you does not limit their ability to put a requirement on the building permit. I honestly don't know. It sounds like something that I think they're supposed to require.
Yeah, I can't.
If they missed it here.
I can't be sure of this, but I think it is a requirement in the WUI that windows
I think you're right.
are tempered.
So
But the whole town is WUI, so wouldn't that be something that's in the building code to have that type of?
We're not WUI right here. It's kind of the periphery of the town.
Yeah, and so the building code stands on its own.
Right.
We don't put all the building code and every requirement in your staff reports. It doesn't eliminate the building official and the fire department's abilities at the building permit stage to say, hey, this has to be tempered glass. And I believe that Bruce is right. They don't necessarily put every single fire condition.
No, I
Yeah.
understand, but I guess what I was saying is some of that may be just within the building code itself, so.
Yes, that's correct.
That it's not here.
Right.
I have a question. On page 3 of the resolution, conditions 2, 3, and 4 are kind of phrased as if the work was yet to be performed. And I'm just wondering how that works when we're talking about legalizing something that's already been done.
It's not finished yet, so it got stopped when it was almost done, but like, I mean, I don't even know, the picture that I saw, it looked like they hadn't done the finished weather stripping and stuff, so they got stopped. The building official got out there, they were replacing the windows, they had a permit for that, and probably the owner said, oh boy, this would be a great time to put in a window seat, so they got it partially in. The building official either was alerted by a neighbor and said this wasn't on the plans, so it isn't finished yet. That's why we said prior to completing work, they have to get a building permit for that, but that was not permitted, the window seat.
Linda, I see, the staff report, I thought it was just a pop-out window, but actually the entire floor was popped out for that window seat
Yeah,
that
it's a
goes
window,
out.
it's a window
Right.
seat addition. It doesn't extend to the ground.
Right, but it does pop
Right.
out the floor.
Right.
Okay. Any further questions of staff? If not, we can ask the applicant to come up and say a few words. Please state your name.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alexis Tatarsky. I appreciate you staying late to hear this. Yeah, so I think the description is exactly correct. The window seat is about, 6 feet long with 3 feet, and it's intended as a reading nook and a kind of meditation space. It's really beautiful. It is lovely. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to get out and look at it, but it is. I don't have a lot to add to it. I do notice that my neighbor Ian is here. I've had a fair amount of conversation with Ian about this, and I know he has some objections to it. So rather than talk proactively, maybe if he is intending to speak this evening, I could hear his objections before, trying to proactively respond to those.
Let's first see if the commission has any questions for you.
Okay.
Well then, thank you for your comments. We'll let your neighbor speak and then ask you to come back up if you can help us with his question.
Thank you.
Please do state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. It's Ian N.D. Davidson, 90 Toyon Drive. And thank you, Chairperson, and everyone, and Linda, and Commissioner for being here. I just threw together something here. Basically, the stop work order on the non-permitted new second story, I think you mentioned it's third story actually, window box opening facing our property is unacceptable and illegal. The fact that this construction continued after the stop work order until it was completed also displays a situation that, as the inspector told me, quote, our neighbor is doing it at his own risk. The building code exceptions to the planning department's rules that are allowing it to proceed are also unacceptable. The building inspector told me that most of the various work being done over the past few years, and it's been pretty constant over the past few years now, was permitted. Why would anyone push out a large new window? There's no opening on that side other than a small corner window previously. And why would anybody do this without obtaining a permit after getting permits on all the other ones that were not even they were existing. This was almost all completely a shingled solid wall up there looking towards our property. Maybe it was thought that doing it legally might delay the process and have the chance to have it approved afterward. The fact that this window opening on the second floor facing our property negatively impacts our property, its value, and the peaceful enjoyment of our property, thus opening up a major source of light, noise, and less privacy directly to our peaceful environment while not being in the compliance with the rules and regulations. We have spent a few decades maintaining a sanctuary of healthy oak trees while keeping the grounds natural and pristine. There are a number of surrounding properties that do surround us that have enjoyed the less developed little forest in our backyard. We believe that it is exactly why people have enjoyed the area, along with the views and the quiet nature. Thank you.
Okay, sir, could you clarify for me? I don't see a map or something indicating, unless I can't find it. I have a couple of photos. I have this. Could you show me on these photographs where your property is and how it? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's start one more time.
Okay.
And so this is the applicant's property and their window, and this is your property.
Correct.
Which is 105 feet away. And so
Oh, yeah. Okay, because the
what
fence.
is the problem that you have? It lights up the trees, or it lights up
No,
your?
we've been up there for a few decades. It's been very dark and pleasant, and we've kept it pristine. So we have 5 properties that come around our property. If we had our property looking like a lot of the properties that have been overdeveloped, it would lose the whole character of the area.
What is the problem with the window that
It's-
you have?
The previous owners that were there, when they had certain family events and things, it was very loud and very bright. It's just the nature of the hill and the way sound and light comes through. But that's before this large window opening upstairs. And since the property's been worked on for a few years, there are a lot more lights. But this thing is putting it over the edge for us. And the quality of life we've enjoyed there, the peacefulness.
Because it lights up 105 feet of trees.
I don't know, it lights the trees. It's like, we're used to looking out there where it's dark in the evening, because you feel like you're in the woods for a few decades. And sure.
So they have no
lights
light?
start coming here and there.
They have-
Come from everywhere, but now we have this huge
Don't they,
orifice up there.
don't they have lights on the entire side of that property? On
Oh,
the-
yeah, there are various lights there, yeah,
Okay.
but nothing that's up and large. And that previously was all solid shingles across there.
I see what
So
you're saying.
You're saying that you see the interior lights of the house through that
Well, yeah,
big
because
window?
we keep the trees clear. When we moved in many years ago, our poison oak with vines this thick, it's like a jungle.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been working it and nurturing it, and the deer come back there, and it's a little sanctuary away from the madness of the world. And as you know, you can't stop the world from
Did you
developing.
see these? Do you have these?
People are developing properties more and more.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you?
But
It wasn't in
Well,
mine.
that's probably
Okay.
Linda's copy.
Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate it.
Let me ask you, sir, do you have a response to the comments,
Yes,
your neighbor's comments?
I do have some response, yeah. I mean, I really appreciate the sanctuary feeling that Ian talks about there. He has done a really beautiful job in planting redwood trees in that lot. He nurtures those trees. He obviously loves those trees. There are deer, there are other things in it. That's exactly the sanctuary feeling that I have the benefit of enjoying from this window seat, looking in that direction. I don't know what loud noise he might be expecting to come from a reading nook in the master bedroom. There's also, as far as I can tell, I mean, I've really looked hard to try to figure this out and understand his actual objection. As far as I can tell, there's essentially no, or very nearly no, ability to see light, you know, even ambient light in there through this window. There already is an opening window just 3 feet over from this window, so it's not, you know, it's not introducing new. I mean, it's new, but it's not the first window in that wall. My view.
So I'll turn this on so we can hear you.
Big pictures, but yeah, that's
Oh.
okay. So this is basically, yeah, my view looking up toward Ian
Toward
Lee's
their house.
is of this. Since
Yes.
somewhere in there, you can maybe pick out a post on their gate, on their deck.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't see any light from their house, and it'd be really surprising to me if there's a significant amount of light somehow visible, you know, from up there.
Do you plan to cover your window with anything?
It wasn't the intention, although it's a possibility.
What kind of glass?
Get back onto the.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. No, it wasn't the intention to cover it, although, yeah, we have, my partner Kat has said that she might like some curtains there, but I mean, it's impossible for me to understand how any significant amount of light could be visible. You know, there's certainly no light directed in that direction.
Thank you, sir. Do commissioners have any questions for the applicant? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
I do have
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
one more thing to add, which is, I don't know where essentially the window seat borders 88 Toyon. Ian and Dee's property is slightly offset from that. And then there's another property that has a little bit of visibility to it from the side. And I did speak to the various, at 112 Toyon, I did speak to the various neighbors there about this and got letters of support for this project from the neighbor who actually borders the property on that side and the neighbor who has a little bit of visibility into it from there, which I can
Have you given those to staff?
I have not.
Why don't you do?
They did write those instead. So, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so to whom it may concern, we have had the opportunity to walk the property with the owner of 75 Woodland Road and discuss the proposed bay window addition. This addition on the second story borders the lower portion of our property at 88 Toyon Drive. We greatly appreciate the efforts Alexis has made to share his plans. We have no objections to this addition and are something that, and hope that the committee will approve the addition. Please contact us if you need any further information. Kindly, David and Stephanie Russell. And the second one, to the Planning Commission members, my property at 112 Toyon Drive borders 75 Woodland on the north side. The new window seat that Alexis is proposing is slightly visible from my property. However, I do not consider it a problem at all. I am unable to attend the Planning Commission meeting on September 21st, but if I were, I would speak in support of his application. In lieu of attending, I am writing this letter of support. Alice Bartholomew.
Both those properties are directly across the from that window? These two wrote the letters, okay.
I know that 88 is directly, but
right
the
here.
112, I'm not exactly sure. Can you show me on the,
It's on attachment B, there, the fold out here.
my foldout? I'm getting all turned around. Okay, so maybe on here, this sometimes helps.
Okay, so,
Oh, 112, okay, I see it. Yeah, so,
And, yeah, so it's this, which is, the window seat's here, right?
Right.
So it's this and this, which has a little bit of view in that direction to the side of it.
right. So you guys look at the drawing that Bruce wants you to look at, the aerial photo. That helps you figure out where those two neighbors are. Yeah.
There's houses in the large yellow square on this map, B1. Is that all the same house, that same property? Well, it is 25,000 square feet. It's hard to tell. Okay. Your microphone?
Yeah, there are no houses. That's the property. The
Oh,
yellow
okay.
block is 75 Woodland Road. And if you
Okay.
can see the grayer area in the elongated
in the
boot
smaller
section, that's
yes,
the house.
That's the main house.
Yeah,
And the rest of it is just driveway and
property,
open property.
yard, yeah.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, I have some comments. I mean, my initial thoughts about this before we got here tonight was kind of like big whoop, but some of the comments that the neighbor made have me kind of reconsidering that. And the neighbor is pointing out that this is, legalizing something where the work has already begun, it happens a lot, and, but we don't necessarily need to reward that. I don't know, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this one.
Linda, do we not charge double fees or something as a penalty?
Yeah, they
in
pay
these
penalties.
instances?
They pay penalties. When I first started working here, I worked with a building official who explained that we're not really into punishment, we're just into compliance. So the owner, whether knowingly or unknowingly, did it, he had a permit, so he may have thought, it was covered, I don't know. At this point, he's trying to legalize it. It doesn't encroach into the minimum side yard setbacks right? It doesn't project out from an existing house more than 3 feet. I'm not sure, it seems like we're getting a lot of people who are coming out about window additions. We don't have any kind of view ordinances in Fairfax, and to me, you know, you should be able to make some minor improvements to your house. The findings are, does this have a significant impact on the use and enjoyment of someone else's property? I know that everyone's idea of what a significant impact is different, but
it doesn't seem like 25 square feet, 107 feet away,
you know,
would have a...
Sometimes this helps when the commission considers, can you make findings for denial? Because what will have to happen if it looks like you want to go that way, you'll have to continue it and we'll have to come back with a resolution for denial. I don't see how this window addition with the seat in it is significantly limiting or having a significant negative impact with all the tree cover on a neighbor's property.
Well, and
You know, maybe if there was a swimming pool, like right up to the edge of the rear of the neighbor's property down at the bottom where someone could see it from the window. I think that when you buy a house in Fairfax, you're in a city and you can't expect to see no lights or no houses because it's an incorporated area.
Well, what I hear, and this is just one of those situations where I think, as you're indicating, Linda, the findings and the ordinances indicate that this should be able to be done with paying the double permit fee and getting it legalized and then following all the building codes. But that the issue is between two neighbors and just trying to make the best resolution for everybody. It sounds to me, I could be wrong, but it sounds to me that the applicant is primarily interested in a reading nook and probably, I would guess, is probably most interested in the daylight use of that reading nook because you can sit in the reading nook and see the woods out there, which are kindly taken care of by Ian. And then it sounds to me that Ian, the neighbor at 90 Toyan, is primarily concerned with the light emanating from that window at night. And so it seems to me that curtains have already been mentioned, that some sort of curtain kind of thing is the kind of the direction to go to try to make that work. I can appreciate, if I'm understanding, and I haven't been there, I have to confess, I haven't visited the property, but I'm envisioning that looking out at night and seeing some wildlife out there, because wildlife tend to come out more at night, is kind of fun, you know? And all of a sudden now you look out and you see a light shining down there. And so even though it may seem like it's not a big deal, it's, you know, it's a really unfortunate thing. And legally, yeah, you know, we, right on our street, we used to look at a whole wooded hillside, and now we see this big fat wall of a house there that I won't go into where that came from, but didn't make us happy. But that was long before I was anywhere close to the Planning Commission, and it just got built. 2 of them, in fact, next door to each other, got built. But it's, that would be my suggestion just in terms of trying to mediate this situation. And it's not, I can't really see putting conditions on it. Maybe other commissioners have ideas about that. But it's the kind of thing where I would strongly suggest that you try to work this through on the level of enjoy your reading nook during the day and try to prevent too much light from emanating out at night, because when it's dark at night, that light, even though it's over 100 feet away, it makes a big difference. It just changes the whole character of it. So that's what I'm hearing and what I would suggest.
Other comments?
I guess I have a question for Linda. Is that something we can regulate, or is that just something that's suggested?
Well, sure.
Because I'm not
Oh,
sure.
you could make it a condition, you make them, use clear story windows, so I think you could condition it that there be blinds. Whether it's gonna be impossible for us to enforce, we'll have to see, Get complaints that the blinds aren't shut, we'll send them letters, and hopefully they'll cooperate and keep them closed. I think you can put that condition on.
Certainly done that before. We've done screening and coverings and opaque glass, so it wouldn't be the first time. My difficulty is in looking at the general plan policies and the findings that need to be made. The policies include that new and renewed development should be designed and located so as to minimize visual mass. I think 25 square feet kind of minimizes visual mass. Shall preserve and enhance the existing character of the neighborhood, the architectural character, size and mass. I believe it does that. It's certainly similar in size to other windows on comparable properties. In terms of findings, that type of window design is not contrary to objectives of the general plan. It doesn't deter from the quality of the development. I don't know that we could consider it a grant of special privilege. It certainly doesn't seem detrimental to the public welfare. It is located over 90 feet from the nearest neighboring residence and extensive tree cover. So I find it difficult to say that the findings cannot be made. I have, not that anybody cares, but I have a neighbor who's so close and whose exterior floodlight goes on when I walk into my front room at night. So,
Some of them have sensitivity adjustments.
at least it's not on. Comments, Mimi? You look like you're...
I think one of my concerns is that we not try to regulate curtains on windows. I think it's different than an opaque window or a clear story window because, you're talking about regulating when somebody shuts a curtain on their window. I just have a problem with getting that into regulating people's lives in Fairfax. I think we either say yes to this window or no to this window. That's my thoughts.
I agree.
Yes, and I guess that was what my question was to Linda, but I didn't really want to say what my opinion was, but...
Would you be willing to make that a motion?
Well, I'm not sure how we want to word it, but I believe that there's sufficient screening between the two properties in question. So I don't have any objections to the application.
But will someone make that a motion?
I think we're all reluctant to make a motion because we just kind of have an unresolved dispute in the room. And we all wish we didn't have that, but there's, I think we've all weighed in that there's nothing we can do to fix it other than to, again, make the really strong suggestion that you try to work with some way of covering that. And there are, we live in an area where there are some amazing window shade stores that will give you all kinds of great options for low profile things that could be put in there and could work out really nicely. So with that, and given that we cannot, that we are the findings as we've gone through in fairly clear detail, just that we have to approve this application because it's the, it just fits. It would be unfair. It would be unfair to other neighbors if we, or to this neighbor relative to other neighbors if we said in this particular case that they couldn't do it. So with that, I will move to approve the application as submitted. I don't recall that we've come up with any corrections, so.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion is approved. There is, however, sir, a 10-day appeal period. If you wanted to file for an appeal, it would take it to the town council. There is a $400 fee for such an appeal. However, I believe that the town council would have the same difficulties we have in being able to go against the policies and the findings that have been made by staff that we concur with. I would hope that perhaps you guys could just talk it through a little bit more, see if you can come to some resolution. But the way the general plan and the findings that we must make in order to disapprove a project like this, we just cannot, in all consciousness, make them at this time. So I'm sorry, sir, I understand your concern about it, but I'm afraid that those are our policies, and that's the decision that we've taken. But you do have that appeal option should you decide in 10 days to file with the city clerk. And I hope it turns out to not be the problem that you anticipate. Thank you for coming to share your thoughts with us. A written planning director's report. That was very nice. He took the time to draft something for us. Have a good evening, folks.
Are you related to Justine?
She's my sister, yes.
Okay.
Do you know her? Yes. I love it. Yeah, well, I've got it all around my list too.
I see the general plan is under review to see what changes or what's the word, what adoptions need to be made to bring all our ordinances in conformance with the general plan policies.
We have created our own table that just includes yours so that we don't have to flip through all those other groups and their requirements, right? And now we're going to be going through them to see which ones have been accomplished, which ones haven't been, which ones mirror some of yours in your list, and yeah. No, actually, it's kind of, it was very distressing when I first looked at the number of pages. It's kind of manageable now.
Did you, just for curiosity, did you find that, you're familiar with the original form that we created during the
Yeah, no, I kept your
one long night there during the joint meeting
Right.
to pull together so that was just a straight spreadsheet, and now it's been courtesy of Diane Causey.
Yeah, she did a
it's been
beautiful.
made into
She did a beautiful job with her. She
magnificent.
has
So have you
rules.
found that to be helpful?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
because she has
good,
rules for how to work with it and everything in the beginning, and yeah.
Thank you. I like the idea of an advisory subcommittee of perhaps 2 commissioners to work with staff on that, and I would like to recommend Bruce, since you have been so involved with the general plan and the implementation committee, that you would be a perfect person. I know you have a rather full plate right now. And are we being asked to just consider, and then next month we'll talk about whether we want to establish the subcommittee?
Planning director's not even here right
Okay,
now, and he
right.
hasn't been for a month. So
we'll just
I think it's going
mull
to
it
take us
over.
some time, and it may be ready next month, but I think that, what does he say? I kind of think that's wishful thinking in October, maybe November, but
Well, he was talking about having
yeah, having the
a work
committee meet
thing.
first, yeah.
Well,
So I-
well, he was talking about getting together for a workshop, like in fall or even spring.
Right.
So he was looking a little bit longer. I would hope, though, that we can start working on that before work picks up again, you know,
It's
so.
all, I have bad news. It's
No,
all-
I know.
In the last 2 days, we've gotten like 5 new applications, 2 of them new houses.
Those would be coming to us at our October meeting?
Oh, no, I mean, they've just been submitted, so they have their 30-day review with all the agencies, and they have to be reviewed by the town engineer, and
Okay,
sometimes that
so they
takes a
don't
couple-
have a final submittal yet. Good, so they could be months out.
It's just that there really is no downtime anymore, you know?
Do we have a number of items scheduled for October, November already? Do you have a sense of that?
I know that there's going to be 2 in October, but there's really no way to tell how many people are going to complete their applications, you know what I mean? So,
But that also, if we were to do that, that would also mean that you guys would have had to do all your prep work before we looked at things, right? So that's not,
are you talking about this list, I
yeah,
thought we were just talking about the timeline for this list. I think we're going to it's going to take some time for staff to go through it and get it to the point where some group can actually discuss how you're going to prioritize things. Because
You're
it
months
takes
out.
time to do that, and we've got, we have citizens coming in and calling all day long. It's like the only day we really have to focus on something that is this detailed would be Fridays.
So we're a couple months out from getting to that list.
Unless the planning director has some other magical way to get this done, and maybe he's planning on working on it, I don't know, because he hasn't been here for a month.
Can you tell me, was his intent to have us at least review that list before we had our retreat or our workshop session, or are those 2 separate items at this time?
He's saying right here, I read this once very quickly. It's going to take staff some time to review the list and make preliminary determinations on what appears to have been taken care of, align it to the items in the Planning Commission. He says, everyone should probably plan on a catered lunch at the Planning Commission workshop when that is scheduled later on. So he's kind of implying there
Later
that
on this year
that's
or in
when,
the spring?
that's when he's planning to first start discussing this. Oh, no, then he says, in the meantime, the staff's very amenable to a ad hoc advisory subcommittee. So what that says to me is that if there's a couple people that want to come down and help staff work on doing this, he's willing to entertain that.
That was an excited utterance.
Okay.
Just trying to tell you that we're making progress, but don't expect tomorrow.
You know, glutton for punishment that I am, I'm not signing up for the committee, but I would like to, maybe just come by sometime and take a look at what you've got there when you have it in some sense that.
What I would do is I would call the planning director and arrange to come in. See,
Because
yeah.
we're meeting.
Yeah, just make it.
We started
Yeah.
meeting regularly before our planning commission meetings to talk about agendas and what's
Yeah.
going on. So that would be
Yeah,
a
that's a
good time
perfect
to
time.
spend a few minutes and look it over.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do that.
I'm sure he'd be willing to let you do that once he looks it over, but since he hasn't been here, he hasn't seen it yet. He may have some ideas. I may be doing it completely wrong.
Any other comments on the director's report?
So I would be happy to work on whatever that's called his idea. Sounds like that we would have a committee of maybe 2 people to work on it. And it does sound like the timeline would be that committee wouldn't really swing into action until well into November at least. And that would be helpful for me because I'm kind of booked at this point. I haven't been so booked in quite a few years, and
you may be even more
I have been
booked.
that booked before, but I was younger at that time.
We're moving on to commissioner comments. Cindy?
Okay. So a question I had was on our process for approving minutes. I was looking for, I can't remember what I was looking for, but I went online to review minutes about some issue, and I came across the May minutes that were posted online, and there was one item in the minutes that the Planning Commission's decision was totally different than the item that it was addressing. So somehow, that Planning Commission decision applied to some other agenda item than the one that it was attached to in the minutes, the final minutes that have been posted online. So that kind of raised in my mind the question of what's the process once we go over the minutes here, we approve the corrections to the minutes. How do they then get from that process to online, and is there any kind of a review of the finalized approved minutes before they're posted?
So you guys make the changes. I honestly don't know how this happened, but she's absolutely right. So it must have, did you ever go back and watch the recording? No. Okay, I haven't had a chance to do that yet either. Was I even at that
I mean, I
meeting?
can't believe that
It
the
was so
recording
wrong.
would
It
show
was-
that we were
Yeah,
merging two different.
It was so wrong that I can't believe that one of the commissioners didn't catch it and correct it.
Well, I don't think that when we reviewed the minutes, and I'd have to go back and look at the video, that was in the minutes, the draft minutes that we looked at.
Yeah, so anyway, so I
But-
guess it doesn't really
Well,
matter how it
I actually
happened.
keep local copies of all these packets on, so, but-
So anyway, that raised the question of.
I'm thinking that this that this probably isn't going to happen now that you have a planning director. I know that Ben is talking about talking to Tony DeFrancis, who is our minutes clerk, and he probably will have her make the corrections. What's been happening up till now is we take notes, I make the changes, and then I have other staff people look it over. I don't know how that happened. I'd have to go back and watch and see if we were directed to make the changes. I don't know if it was a late meeting and just nobody saw it, or, because it was so wrong. I mean,
What
the
item was
conditions had nothing to do with the motion. I mean, the project or anything. It was so wrong. I'm not exactly
So
sure
it
how
was some
happened.
sort of cut and paste error or something that just, something got put in the wrong place, it
Yeah,
sounds like.
and I
So I'm
think,
trying to understand, the two of you are trying to sort out whether this
We're
was
just trying to
something that may have happened after we approved the draft minutes in
Yes.
some future step?
Right, and I'm just
Okay.
trying to look at a process that perhaps avoids that in the future. So if there's something where
And
we
you
make
were
the
looking-
corrections and maybe
I guess the place
the
is-
chair reviews them and sign, I don't know.
we'll do whatever you guys think we should do. I think it's going to take care of itself when we have now that we have a planning director. You know, I mean, in May, we didn't have a planning director. We just had a guy, Craig, that came in a couple of days.
Just a guy that came in.
Well, he came in like maybe one day a week for 4 hours, and he was just assigned specific things to do. And so there was no one person that was in charge of the whole department that actually has enough downtime to go back and read through that stuff, not getting constantly interrupted with phone calls and having to go to the counter, right? I'm hoping that it won't happen. I think it's something we can easily fix. I'll talk to Garrett, because it was so wrong. I mean, that we should be able to go back, look at the tape, and just make sure it gets corrected.
Okay,
You
because
know?
those, I mean, that's what we rely on, so.
Yeah.
Then the second item I had deals with signs. So, sign approvals granted by the Planning Commission, and we went through this on 31 Bolinas, are good for 6 months.
Sign approvals are good for 6 months.
All approvals granted by the Planning Commission under certain sections shall expire within 6 months unless acted upon by the issuance of a building permit or the erection of the approved sign.
Okay.
So the question that I had was, because, I occasionally get questions from people that say, that gas station, it hasn't been finished, or this has been, kind of in construction, like the Java Hut, in construction for a while. What's going on with that? We've got, like the 31 Bolinas, where there'd been many iterations of things, and you look at, the issue that we had with covering the stuff, the HVAC stuff and all on the top, and maybe that's covered on one side now, but maybe not all of the sides. And, the signage that we approved hasn't been erected yet. So I guess like with something like that, the question is, what we issue is good for 6 months unless a building permit is issued.
Or an
And
inspection.
then it goes for however long the building permit, or is under that building permit for however long. But I guess the question I had in mind was, does the planning department have any kind of a tickler system on things like that, like temporary permits and things, to kind of track them back to make sure that they're being followed?
We have never enforced this, I can tell you. So we have a tickler file for like our HRD permits, the big permits, that we put them in our calendars so that, they're good for a year, and then we send a letter, when it gets close to that year, we send a letter to the owner, because if they haven't gotten their building permit, it's expensive. It costs almost $10,000 to apply for an HRD and go through the planning commission process. So
What's an HRD?
A hill area, the
Thank
hill
you.
area, you know, for new houses or 50% remodels, it's really expensive to get in front of you guys. So we have ticklers for that, and we send people letters ahead of time because the code allows them to request a year extension, right? But we
the same
don't,
with
have
signs?
tickler files for the sign permits.
Can they request a 1-year extension or a 6-month extension?
Of the
On a
signs?
sign?
It's not saying that, but I'm reading this, it doesn't say a building permit for the sign necessarily. I mean, if the project, they have a building permit for their project and he's been running into problems with firing contractors, you know, but the project is under construction and he does make progress. Mark goes out there on a regular basis.
As long as there's inspections,
and that is
the
happening.
project could go on for years.
He's doing a lot of things inside because he's running into trouble
with-
trying to use the food cart and make it into a kitchen that's going to be acceptable to the health department. It's not, hasn't been as easy as he thought it was going to be. I mean, I think if he didn't call Mark for 6 months, right, then we might say that his sign permit is expired, he has to come back, but that hasn't happened yet. But we don't typically, I don't have ticklers for sign permits, because most of the time people come in, they want their sign up yesterday, and we don't run into this issue that we're running into with Chevron and with the Java Hut.
Well, right, and
I'm not.
And I was looking at this for the Bolinas one, where we did the sign, remember we did, you weren't here, I don't think, where we did the sign with the sign pole thing.
Right, they do have their building permit in for that. Their application's been submitted.
Okay.
To Mark, you know, and so,
6 months.
I mean, I think,
No, if they have the building permit,
Then it runs with a building permit.
yeah, and I don't think it's fair if the delay is on our building department end, you know, to penalize them.
Right.
So, I'm not sure what's holding that up, because they were ready to put it up when we told them they had to go to you guys. I mean, they had the hole dug and the post in the ground.
And I think it's still a hole.
I thought was putting up a blade sign in front of their door, weren't they?
Not that,
I thought I saw a blade.
she got permits for her signs.
She was not going to be incorporated with that strip.
No, she purposely did not want to be involved in the combined sign because of issues that she has with her landlord.
Well, I think she already had the sign up though, didn't she? So she wasn't a part of that?
She made it so that she did not have
Right.
to be involved in that sign application. That was a conscious choice. She wanted to be separate. She didn't want to be,
That's all I had.
you know, okay.
I have a suggestion that, or a request actually, I'll make it more formal, that we add to the agenda specifically next month. I know we were just talking about how much we might have on our agenda, but we have in our general plan some programs that indicate that we should be thinking about the historical significance of buildings and possibly some other features within the town, and trying to clarify in whatever way we wish to do this. The thing is just to think about this, think about what it is that we might want to do in town. And I've discussed that for a few years now with Cassidy DeBaker, who sat with me on the General Plan Implementation Committee. Cassidy works as, her day job is with Garcia and Associates. She's an anthropologist, or an archaeologist, and is very passionate about historic preservation. And we've talked for a while about her doing some kind of a presentation to the Planning Commission. So I'd like to, she's now out of the country, but she will be back in October, and we've communicated about this, and she says she would be ready to do that this next meeting. If we could put something on for a presentation at the beginning of the meeting, just as an informative presentation, not as a decision-making item for the commission, but for us to get some
What's the
thoughts from
topic
her.
again?
The topic would be, and I don't know, I won't speak for her, but my understanding of what she's thinking, at least what I'm thinking, is exploring what it could possibly look like to maybe create some kind of Fairfax-specific way of describing what we all in the community, we hear a lot of feedback from the community about preservation of the feel of Fairfax. And we've talked about that Jim used to talk about form-based codes. And there's various different ways to approach the sort of how to put the look and feel of something into code. But one way to possibly approach that is to designate, to note that certain buildings, certain facades or whatever they're sort of part of the historic look and feel of Fairfax. But something short of trying to get any of our buildings on a statewide historic register, which can be really, really burdensome. It's a lot of work and very major cost to actually impose on a building owner because it essentially says all of a sudden they can't do anything anymore. And that can be really difficult when some of these buildings are actually in need of maintenance. So the idea, as I understand it, is to sort of explore what we might do specifically in Fairfax, our own sort of homegrown way of trying to get at what the public would like to do, of acknowledging the look and feel and the history of Fairfax in a way that works for us. So anyway, I'm suggesting that we put on the agenda for next month a presentation by Cassidy DeBaker on that general topic. And I'm sorry I'm so vague about what she would present.
I like the idea if we don't have a whole slew of stuff coming up. I don't want to go till 1 o'clock in the morning to do that.
How does this sound, Bruce? I will have, when she's back, we can have her and Ben talk, and, depending upon how long she thinks she needs and what our schedule looks like. Right now, there's only 2 items that I know of, but that could change. So it might be the perfect meeting. But we'll leave it up to Ben, the planning director, and Cassidy to talk and get the topic description down. How does that sound okay? Okay.
Linda, I have a question for you. When does the town newsletter go out? Doesn't the town have a Garrett puts out a
Garrett
director's
Graham.
report, the Garrett ditty? I get it in the mail. I love it.
In the mail?
Not in the mail, email. Something like that.
I remember kind of hit and miss, not on any regular basis, getting a town manager, I forget what he calls it.
Report.
Something like that, where he just updates the council and the public on things that have occurred in the town, but it's not on any schedule. I think it's just, when he, or when he has enough items of interest to put in it. I'll check with him, though. If I'm wrong, I'll call you. Seem to be on it.
We
have
any
minutes,
other-
right?
Yeah, we
Oh.
have minutes, unless you guys have any other comments or questions of Linda.
We used to do a nice formal newsletter that, I don't even remember how we mailed it out, but it was like twice a year. It was biannually.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Communication, though. It was paper.
The olden days. Last century.
Okay, can we look over the minutes?
Well, I have my usual flurry of unimportant minuscule picayune edits. So on the bottom of page 2, last paragraph, in the first line, the word "what" is, Commissioner Ackerman had questions about what the current driveway. If we eliminate the "what," that sentence makes sense. Got that? Yeah. Top of page 3, the very first line, there's just the wording. Yeah. Wording is what I think it's supposed to be, so the letter K. And then in the third paragraph, the last line, Commissioner Green. And I'm not sure if there were any others. Those would probably not make any difference to the future of Fairfax if they weren't corrected, but hey.
Though you know what it
I
made
found
me,
them, I've got to tell you.
this made me think about, going back, Cindy, to your question about how do we treat the minutes. One thing staff has started to do with the resolutions, because it's sometimes a little tricky to remember the resolutions and changes that we made to them when I look them over to sign them. And so staff has started to redline any changes that were made to the resos, so I could take a look at those before signing the reso. Maybe if we make significant changes to the meetings, it is more work, but is it more work than having someone pull out the record and listen to the meeting and then review them at that point? I'm thinking perhaps, and it might not be any easier, if we have major changes, redline them and bring them back for review.
I think we should have this discussion with the planning director, because I think he's going to change the way some things happen. I mean, anyway. He
May
has
not
a
be
lot of
necessary.
ideas for making sure there are no errors in things, and I really think we should just table this to discuss it with him, because I think he's going to have some ideas that and I don't even know how that one happened, but you didn't find any others? That's really odd.
I was looking for a specific item, so
Yeah,
I just
because
stopped
I mean,
when
we
I
take
did
notes,
that.
we go back the next day, I go back the next day, and I change the things that you guys corrected. This was so weird.
Thing then. Okay.
I can't.
Let's let that go and finish these minutes and go home.
Yeah, hold off on saying it was a one-off until I'm done with my comments on the minutes, because I will start with page 3, middle of the page. Mrs. Henry Taylor is Mr. Henry Taylor, or Ms. And then on page 4, motion Newton, second Green, motion to approve Res 1728 with the elimination of condition number 12. It was also a modification to condition number 11 regarding outside agencies. And that is reflected on the next page when we say, Commissioner Newton asked staff to make the same wording change to condition 11 regarding outside agencies that was recommended in the prior agenda item.
I'm sorry,
So I start off on page 4, right before item 3, at the end of item 2, where it talks about the changes we made to the resolution that was in the packet. And it says we were eliminating condition 12 regarding the window over the interior stairway. We also modified the language in number 11 dealing with outside agencies. And in the next item, number 3, about halfway down, actually the top of page 5, where it talks about Commissioner Newton provided the following comments. One of the comments was to make the same change to number 11 in that item that we'd made to the prior item. Okay, so then moving on down to the end of item 3 on that bottom of page 5, Motion Ackerman, second Gonzalez-Parber motion. The additional conditions suggested by Commissioner Green regarding the length of the parking spaces, the correction made by Commissioner Swift, and the changes to paragraph 11 regarding outside agencies. And I don't know what we did with condition number 12. I have a number 12 question mark there. So you may need to go back and look at what we did with that one on number 12, if anything. And I hope I'm not making you do more work to check out that number 12, but for some reason, it just stuck out at me as,
One of the comments that Ben has made to me is, I'm not sure how we got to this point where our minutes clerk doesn't come to the meetings. And I'm not exactly sure how or why it happened, but that may be a solution for some of these things, because she's doing them remotely by watching the video, right? So
Which makes it really important that we use the microphone, because she probably
But I know
can't hear these things.
this is the way it works for the council too. She no longer attends the council meetings either. She just does them remotely. But if it's, if the accuracy is suffering.
It's an overtime issue though.
Yeah, it's a cost
I imagine
thing.
it's a cost issue, and
Yeah.
townspeople seem to be very concerned that we keep our costs down, which we do.
well, I'm sure our planning director will resolve this, no problem.
He's commented, no, I'm serious, he's commented, so I think he's thinking about all this stuff. It's just that he was only here a few weeks, and then he had this vacation planned, and so he has a lot of great ideas, but he hasn't had enough time to really work on implementing them, so. He's back on Monday.
I concur. I think, if it's.
So I have
giving you some good ideas, and you're going to go think about them. That's good.
Okay, so and then in the planning director's report, there's a typo in the middle. It's, and this is page 9. This is in the minutes for the planning director's report. He reported the state has passed.
I'll take the passes.
Has passes. All right, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I'll second. Oh, you got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining since I wasn't here.
You did see the original correction on number 11 though, right?
Okay, wait.
On page 3?
And just
The
to point
fourth
out, this
paragraph.
is the minutes. This is not the actual resolution. So, I mean, it's possible that the minutes missed minutes missed something, but that the resolution actually was corrected. Is that?
Correct the resolution.
I just wanted the conclusion of the item in the minutes to accurately reflect the amendments that were agreed to during the discussion by the commission.
As it should, so that people can, track what happened and not have to go back and watch the whole meeting. Yeah.
I better keep this one.
Can we adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
We're adjourned.